The unexpected lottery paradox. When winning feels like losing. Let me paint you a scene. You are lying in bed, the lights are dim, your blanket is wrapped just right, and you are ready to drift off into dreamland. Then, out of nowhere, your brain taps you on the mental shoulder and asks, if someone tells you that you will win the lottery tomorrow, but you never expect to win, did you ever really expect it? Welcome, friend, to the unexpected lottery paradox. It is the perfect paradox for that twilight zone between wanting to sleep and questioning the very structure of logic itself. It belongs to the family of paradoxes to fall asleep to, yet it also lives in the curious land of rationality rules, reality distortion, and sleep philosophy. If you love infinite regress and losing debates with yourself, you are in the right place. And before this logical roller coaster leaves the station, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe for more paradoxes to fall asleep to, and check out the playlist for other episodes in this relaxing but thought-bending series. I promise each chapter is stranger than the last. Now breathe, and let us play the lottery. Here is the scenario. A teacher tells a group of students, "You will have a surprise lottery tomorrow." Naturally, the students get excited. Who does not want to win something unexpectedly? But then the overthinkers, you know the type, start to analyze it. If the lottery happens first thing in the morning, it will not be a surprise. We will have expected it. Then it cannot happen in the morning, which means it must happen later. But if it does not happen in the morning, we will expect it later, which means it cannot happen later either. And just like that, the students conclude that the lottery cannot happen at all. The twist? The next day, the teacher holds the lottery anyway, and the students are shocked. Cue the collective groan of philosophers everywhere. This is the paradox. The very act of predicting that you will be surprised removes the possibility of being surprised. Yet when you logically eliminate the possibility, you are actually surprised. Welcome to the headache-inducing merry-go-round of expectation versus reality. At its core, the unexpected lottery paradox is a cousin of another paradox that makes you hang around, except nobody wants to hang around here. Just dignity and logic do. It is safer, more sleep-friendly, and slightly more sarcastic. Why does this mess with our heads? Because human reasoning loves to break the rules when it thinks nobody is watching. The students use deductive logic to eliminate every possibility, only to be blindsided by the outcome. The universe replied with a smug, "Nice try." The roots of this paradox go back to the 20th century, with philosophers like O'Connor and Marguerite formalizing it. But the spirit of it? That existed the first time someone promised a surprise party and someone else tried to guess the date. Here is the deeper issue. What does it even mean to expect the unexpected? It is a reality distortion of the purest kind. Expectation assumes you can predict, yet unexpected says you cannot. The two ideas cancel each other out, but somehow still show up at the party together. It is the philosophical version of wearing socks with sandals. Let us bring this closer to home. You buy a lottery ticket. You know the odds are astronomically bad. Logically, you expect not to win. But deep down, a little voice whispers, "But what if?" The same voice that suggests ordering dessert even when you are full. That is the unexpected expectation. Or take relationships. You promise yourself, "I will not text first." Then you stare at your phone. You know what will happen. But then you still check at 2:04 a.m., expecting not to expect a reply. Congratulations, you are living the paradox. This paradox also shows up in quantum physics, because of course it does. The observer effect states that observing something changes its outcome. Trying to predict a random event like the lottery? Same energy. It is like sneaking up on a cat. Just when you think you have it figured out, it jumps into another dimension. Philosophers have offered explanations, most of them as satisfying as decaf coffee. One explanation? The student's logic was flawed. The lottery did not have to happen at all. It only needed to possibly happen to preserve surprise. Another view? Surprise is about subjective experience. If the students believed they had outsmarted the system, the teacher's action became unpredictable again. A third, and my personal favorite response, who cares? The paradox has done its job. It forced you to think, argue, spiral into confusion, and realize how thin the line is between knowing and guessing. Of course, some people insist there is no paradox. These people also believe pineapple belongs on pizza and that the Oxford comma is optional. We do not talk about them. Now, as with most paradoxes, there is no elegant solution. That is the point. Paradoxes like these are bedtime puzzles for your brain. They cannot be solved, only explored. They help you learn that rationality rules the mind, but rarely the world. The unexpected lottery paradox also makes an excellent metaphor. Think of life. You plan for everything. You line up schedules, backup plans, insurance. You think you have eliminated all surprises. Then life laughs and says, plot twist. A job offer you never expected. A rainstorm on your wedding day. A stranger becoming your best friend. All unplanned, all unexpected, all real. The paradox teaches us this. Not everything can be predicted or controlled. Sometimes the surprise is the point, and that is oddly comforting. To close, let us apply this to something we all know. Coffee. You tell yourself, I will not need coffee tomorrow. You plan, you sleep early, you hydrate. The next morning you stumble out of bed and make coffee anyway. Were you surprised? Yes. Were you expecting it? Also, yes. The paradox lives on. So, is the unexpected lottery paradox a flaw in logic? Or a reminder that logic cannot account for messy, beautiful, unpredictable life? You decide. And as we end this chapter, I leave you with a final, totally serious philosophical question. If you expect to find the last clean spoon, but the dishwasher surprises you by being empty, did you win the unexpected lottery of kitchen appliances? I will let you ponder that while I go buy another lottery ticket. You know, just in case. The memory paradox, when remembering makes you forget. The scene is familiar. You walk confidently into a room, only to stop mid-step and stare blankly at the wall. You know you came in for something, but what? Your brain, that loyal yet occasionally traitorous companion, refuses to cooperate. You stand frozen, the mental equivalent of a computer with the spinning wheel of doom. This is not just forgetfulness. This is a perfect example of the memory paradox in action. Memory, the thing that defines so much of who you are, also loves to betray you at the worst possible moment. It allows you to recite song lyrics from 20 years ago but draws a complete blank when asked why you opened the fridge. It will let you remember the smell of your grandmother's kitchen, but not the password you just created 5 minutes ago with 6 symbols, 2 numbers, and the blood of a mythical creature. The memory paradox asks a simple yet cruel question. How can you ever be sure your memory is accurate if you can only verify it using that very same unreliable memory? It is like asking a compulsive liar to swear on his own honesty. There is no way out of the loop. Philosophers, psychologists, and anyone who has ever misplaced their keys have wrestled with this problem for centuries. Memory defines identity. Your entire sense of self depends on a long and often patchy series of recollections. Without memory, there is no continuity. You would wake up every day as a stranger to yourself, unsure whether you liked coffee or had a mortal grudge against it. Yet memory is notoriously fickle. It alters details, smooths over awkward edges, merges separate events into one, or just invents stuff entirely. Witnesses at trials will swear they saw a man wearing a red jacket when surveillance footage later reveals he was dressed head to toe in blue. Couples will argue passionately over what song played during their first dance, and both will be convinced they remember correctly. Spoiler alert, one of them is very wrong. The paradox stings because there is no external referee. You only have what you believe you remember. Every time you recall a memory, you are not pulling a perfect recording off the shelf. You are recreating it, often with slight changes. It is like playing a childhood game of telephone, except you are the only player, and you are still losing. The philosopher John Locke argued centuries ago that personal identity is tied directly to memory. He believed if you remember doing something, then you were the person who did it. That works fine in theory. In practice, it falls apart the moment your brain decides to file away the location of your car keys under mystery. Modern neuroscience has only made the paradox worse. Scientists have shown that memories are not stored in neat little boxes. They are scattered like breadcrumbs across different regions of the brain. Every time you remember something, you rearrange those breadcrumbs. Sometimes you get toast. Other times, you get croutons. Here is the twist. You trust your memories to tell you the truth, but you have no way of knowing how much truth they contain. The more confident you are about a memory, the more likely you are to be wrong. Confidence and accuracy are about as closely related as cats and obeying commands. Let us apply this to everyday life. You are sure you turned off the oven before leaving the house. Positive, absolutely certain. 5 minutes later, you cannot shake the thought that you forgot. You go back, only to find it safely off. Your memory lied. It gave you confidence, then pulled the rug out for entertainment purposes. Or think about that awkward encounter with your boss last week. You replay the conversation in your head over and over, convinced you said something ridiculous. You swear you remember the exact expression on his face. Reality check. Your brain probably added drama for flair. Congratulations. You just directed your own psychological soap opera. The memory paradox affects relationships too. Two friends can share the same experience and walk away with wildly different recollections. One remembers it as a delightful afternoon. The other remembers it as a series of mildly catastrophic events. Both believe their version is the truth. Technically, both are wrong. It gets even messier in legal matters. Eyewitness testimony remains one of the least reliable forms of evidence, yet it is still heavily used. Studies show how easily people can be led to misremember details with just a few subtle suggestions. It is unsettling to think that your brain is that eager to collaborate with bad information. Memory is a master of distortion. It edits for convenience. It censors pain. It enhances pleasure. It fills in gaps with whatever makes the best story. The paradox is that you cannot live without it, but you also cannot trust it. Now consider the weirdest part. Memory is essential for forgetting. To remember what is important, the brain must forget what is not. Every memory is selected at the expense of another. You remember your wedding, but forget where you put your sunglasses 15 minutes ago. Memory is selective not out of cruelty, but survival. It knows you would go mad if you remembered everything. Even those rare individuals with near-perfect recall suffer under the weight of endless detail. They do not live enchanted lives of flawless recollection. They live in exhausting, cluttered mental museums, unable to escape even the tiniest event. It turns out there is mercy in forgetting. The paradox of memory is everywhere. It sneaks into childhood stories, political arguments, sporting events, and holiday dinners. It is why you are convinced you once saw a movie that no one else remembers. It is why siblings fight over who actually broke the lamp in 1998. No one will ever know. The truth was quietly erased by time and selective recall. In the end, the memory paradox reminds you that your mind is not a vault, but a messy, rewritable notebook. Your memories shape who you believe you are, yet they shift and blur like fog in the morning sun. There is no resolution. Philosophers and scientists alike have waved the white flag. The memory paradox will never be solved. It will only continue to tease you every time you open the refrigerator and forget why you are standing there. So as you reflect on this paradox, let me leave you with one final question. If you forget where you put your phone, but your phone remembers where you are, who is really the smarter one in the relationship? The conflict of interest paradox. When you cannot lose but somehow do, picture this. You are calmly walking through life, sipping coffee, minding your own business, when suddenly you are asked to make a decision. Not just any decision. A decision where you are expected to be fair, neutral, and logical. The catch? The outcome also affects you personally. Congratulations! You have just wandered straight into the conflict of interest paradox, where the rules insist you must act as an impartial judge, but your wallet, reputation, or pride quietly hum their own persuasive little tune in the background. The paradox is so simple that it becomes infuriating. How can you act completely objectively when you stand to gain or lose based on the outcome? Imagine trying to referee a sports match where your own child is playing, while the opposing team is coached by your boss. No matter what you do, someone will accuse you of bias. Worse, you will accuse yourself. The problem has plagued humanity since people first figured out how to exchange goats for favors. Societies have since invented countless guidelines, policies, and ethics boards to manage conflicts of interest. These measures work about as well as putting a tiny umbrella over a volcano. The volcano thanks you for the gesture and continues erupting anyway. At its core, the conflict of interest paradox exposes an uncomfortable truth. Human beings are not designed for cold, mechanical objectivity. You are wired for survival, for loyalty, for self-preservation. The brain lights up like a Christmas display when personal benefit is involved. It whispers, "What if you just bend the rules a little?" Consider judges, the very symbols of impartiality. Courts around the world have elaborate systems for recusal to avoid conflicts. A judge is supposed to step aside if there is even the appearance of bias. Notice the word appearance. It does not even require proof. Just the faintest hint of impropriety is enough. That is how fragile the system is. Or look at the corporate world. Companies require employees to declare conflicts of interest, sometimes with forms so long they deserve their own postal code. Employees must then pretend that simply writing down, "I own shares in this company," will magically cancel the temptation to help their own stock price. It does not. The conflict still exists, now just slightly more documented. Here is where the paradox twists the knife. You can be fully aware of your bias and still not be able to eliminate it. Self-awareness is supposed to help you correct flaws. In this case, it merely highlights the flaw and shrugs. You can try to compensate, overcorrect, second-guess yourself into paralysis, but the conflict remains. Think of it like trying to grade your own test fairly. You want to be honest, but you also want that perfect score. You convince yourself you deserve a little extra credit for handwriting, maybe an extra point for creative punctuation. By the time you are done, your objectivity is in the next town. The paradox becomes especially visible in politics. Lawmakers routinely vote on policies that directly affect their own financial interests, all while insisting they are representing the greater good. The explanation usually involves phrases like integrity, public duty, and nothing to see here. Everyone nods politely and then checks the latest stock disclosures. Even in personal relationships, the conflict of interest paradox shows up uninvited. You give advice to a friend. It just so happens that the advice, if taken, will benefit you too. You tell yourself you are being fair. Are you? Or have you unconsciously steered the advice ever so slightly to your advantage? Ethicists have tried to untangle this mess by drawing lines between actual conflicts and perceived conflicts. Actual conflicts involve measurable stakes. Perceived conflicts are those sticky situations where someone thinks you might have something to gain. The trouble is that both situations poison trust. Even if you are genuinely fair, no one believes you were. The paradox teaches a brutal lesson. Appearances matter as much as reality. In fact, sometimes they matter more. People do not have access to your internal motives. They only see the outcome and connect the dots, whether you want them to or not. Attempts to eliminate conflicts of interest often backfire. One popular strategy is disclosure. You simply announce your conflict and proceed as normal. This works under the magical thinking that saying the problem out loud neutralizes it. It does not. If anything, it puts a bright neon sign over your decision-making process that says, "Potential bias right here." Another attempted solution is recusal, stepping aside to let someone else make the decision. This works better, provided the replacement has no conflict of their own. Unfortunately, in complex systems, almost everyone is connected to someone. The replacement may simply introduce a new set of conflicts. It is like swapping one tangled pair of earbuds for another. Then there is the most cynical solution: acceptance. Acknowledge that absolute impartiality is impossible. Design systems to minimize damage and move on. Some call this pragmatic, others call it giving up. Both are probably correct. The conflict of interest. Paradox continues to frustrate because it touches something universal. Nobody escapes it. Everyone plays multiple roles: parent, employee, friend, citizen, all with competing obligations. Life does not politely separate these roles for your convenience. They crash into each other like shopping carts in a crowded grocery store. The paradox survives because it thrives on the impossibility of perfect detachment. You can train for fairness, strive for honesty, even create policies with flowcharts, but human nature has a way of sneaking through the cracks. In the end, the conflict of interest paradox stands as a permanent reminder that human decision-making is gloriously messy. It tells you that you may never completely trust yourself, nor will others completely trust you. Somehow, decisions still get made. Life lurches forward, one flawed judgment at a time. So let me leave you with a final, deeply philosophical question. If you promise to split the last slice of cake evenly, but you are also the one holding the knife, have you not already lost the moral high ground before the first crumb hits the plate? The impossible object paradox. When logic takes a sick day. You have seen them. You probably stared too long at them. You may have even quietly muttered to yourself, "That cannot be real." I'm talking about the cursed, glorious, brain-melting creations known as impossible objects. Perfectly drawn, impossibly constructed shapes that defy every rule of perspective, physics, and good taste. They are the visual equivalent of someone replying to your serious email with K. Enter the impossible object. Paradox, a simple, devastating puzzle that asks, how can something exist so vividly in your mind, yet be completely incapable of existing in the real world? Your brain believes what it sees, even as it also screams, nope. The most famous offender is the Penrose triangle, also charmingly called the impossible triangle. 3 straight beams meet at right angles to form what appears to be a solid object. It loops endlessly, defying gravity, common sense, and the structural integrity of any known material. The first time you see it, you stare. The second time, you squint. The third time, you walk away questioning your entire understanding of geometry. Then there is the Penrose staircase, a delightful little monstrosity of design where a staircase somehow loops back onto itself. Every step goes upward, forever. There is no beginning, no end. It is the architectural embodiment of that one coworker who always finds a way to schedule meetings at 4:59 p.m. Impossible objects are masters of deception. They weaponize perspective, exploiting the fact that your brain desperately wants to make sense of the shapes it sees. You have spent your entire life trusting your eyes to report back reliable information. The impossible object paradox cruelly reminds you that your eyes are not above a little betrayal. Artists like M.C. Escher took this concept and ran wild. His works are filled with waterfalls that flow in closed loops, buildings that twist into geometric nightmares, and people walking on walls and ceilings with casual indifference. Escher gave the world permission to break reality for fun. Your sense of spatial awareness never forgave him. The real-world irony. The impossible object exists only because it does not exist. On paper, on screen, it makes perfect sense. Try to build it in 3 dimensions, and physics taps you gently on the shoulder and says, "I will be taking it from here." The paradox teaches a painful lesson about perception. Seeing is not always believing. Your brain, for all its evolutionary brilliance, can be fooled by clever angles and strategic line placement. It fills in gaps, smooths over inconsistencies, and essentially acts like a lazy intern who wants to go home early. The impossible object. Paradox thrives on that tension. It creates an image so convincing that you are certain it must be possible, yet experience and reason tell you otherwise. The object exists in that bizarre limbo between imagination and reality, where it manages to be both something and nothing at the same time. Psychologists have a field day with this. They call it cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of holding two contradictory beliefs at once. You know the object is fake, but your eyes insist it is real. Your brain tries to reconcile the two and, failing spectacularly, simply throws the entire file into the Unsolved Mysteries folder. You may be thinking, why do these objects mess with me so much? The answer is simple and frustrating. Your visual system evolved to interpret a three-dimensional world based on two-dimensional projections. Artists of impossible objects hijack this system. They design shapes that appear perfectly normal in 2 dimensions, but collapse into chaos the moment you attempt to visualize them in 3D. The paradox extends far beyond art. It pops up in architecture, product design, and even marketing. Companies have used impossible shapes in logos to create instant intrigue. It works. People cannot stop looking at them, even as they know something feels deeply, irreparably wrong. Take a closer look at certain product packaging or posters. You might spot an impossible trident, also known as the blivet. 3 cylindrical prongs extend from a shared base, only to morph into 2 flat rectangular shapes at the other end. The more you try to trace it logically, the faster you spiral into existential despair. So what is the practical lesson? The impossible object. Paradox reminds you that your senses, while usually reliable, are far from perfect. They can be hacked, manipulated, and generally toyed with by anyone who knows the rules of perception well enough to break them in creative ways. Do not worry, though. Your brain does this to you all the time anyway. Shadows make you see monsters where there are none. Reflections trick you into thinking someone is standing behind you. You swear you saw your phone vibrate when it did not. The impossible object paradox is just the formal, artistic version of this daily betrayal. There have been attempts to physically construct impossible objects. Artists and sculptors use forced perspective, clever angles, and strategically placed mirrors to create the illusion from a specific viewpoint. The catch? Move even slightly, and the illusion shatters. The magic evaporates like a politician's campaign promises after election day. In this way, impossible objects embody the fragile nature of perception itself. The reality you experience is just a carefully constructed interpretation based on limited information. Most of the time, this works fine. Occasionally, you walk into a glass door you thought was open. The impossible object. Paradox holds up a mirror to your mental limitations and grins. It says, "Look how easily I can break the very thing you rely on to navigate the world." Strangely enough, instead of frustration, most people feel wonder. You laugh, shake your head, and keep staring at the shape you know cannot be. You may never resolve the contradiction. No one ever has. That is what makes the paradox so charming. It exists purely to mock your expectations and remind you that the world still holds a few mysteries your brain cannot tidy away with a neat explanation. So as you contemplate the impossible, let me leave you with a final, completely logical question. If you build an impossible staircase and climb it forever, is that still considered exercise, or just an extremely dedicated form of denial? The problem of the criterion. The most annoying first step. Imagine you are standing in front of a massive library, shelves stretching into infinity. Somewhere in there is the answer to a burning question. Maybe you want to know what is true, or what counts as knowledge, or perhaps just where the nearest restroom is. Here comes the catch. You cannot even begin searching because you have no clue what counts as a valid source, and worse, you cannot decide how to decide. Welcome to the problem of the criterion, the paradox that forces you to face the most irritating question of all. How do you know what you know? This is not the fun kind of philosophical pondering, like wondering if dogs dream in color. No, this is the cruel, brain-twisting kind where the very act of trying to find truth traps you in an endless loop of uncertainty. The paradox works like this. To determine what you know, you first need a method, a reliable criterion. But how do you choose that method? You would need to already know what is true to decide which method works best. The logic loops back onto itself like a snake eating its own tail, only the snake is wearing a pair of glasses and carrying a clipboard. The 17th century philosopher Roderick Chisholm made this paradox famous. He described it with the elegance of a man who probably enjoyed watching people squirm. Chisholm pointed out that you are stuck between two impossible tasks: identifying truths without a standard, or finding a standard without already knowing some truths. This is the philosophical version of being asked to choose the best ladder, except you need to be on the roof already to test which ladder works. In daily life, most people casually sidestep this nightmare. You assume certain things to be true and proceed as if the universe agrees. The sun will rise tomorrow. Water is wet. Coffee is a human right. These assumptions get you through the day, but the problem of the criterion lurks quietly beneath every decision, silently judging your confidence. Academics, of course, refuse to let this go. They have divided into camps over how to deal with it. First, there are the Methodists. Methodists believe you should first establish a way to evaluate claims and then figure out what counts as knowledge. This sounds reasonable until you realize that agreeing on a method is as easy as herding caffeinated cats. Then there are the particularists. Particularists insist you should begin by accepting certain things you just know and work backward to figure out why you know them. In other words, jump into the pool first, then decide whether it was safe to swim. Not exactly comforting. Both approaches have glaring problems. Methodists cannot agree on a method. Particularists cannot agree on which facts are obviously true. Meanwhile, the rest of the world wonders why philosophers keep showing up at parties only to corner someone in the kitchen and ask, "But how do you know that for sure?" The problem of the criterion is not limited to ivory tower debates. It shows up everywhere. Think about voting. How do you decide who to trust with your vote? Based on what criteria? Then ask yourself how you chose those criteria. Now you see the trap. Or try buying a mattress. You want the best one. You read reviews. Some say firm is best. Others say soft. Memory foam. Latex. Hybrid. You realize you have no objective standard for what best even means. Eventually, you buy the one that comes with free pillows and pretend the decision was deeply researched. Science tries to avoid the paradox by relying on observation and experimentation. Test, measure, repeat. It works beautifully until you remember that even deciding what to measure requires a criterion. Which variable matters? What is the threshold for proof? The problem of the criterion waves from the back row with a smug smile. In law, judges face the same issue. What is fair? What is just? Legal systems have developed entire volumes of rules, but at the heart of it, someone had to decide which rules to write. Circular logic rears its head once again. Even your personal life is not safe. Relationships, careers, moral choices, they all depend on assumptions of what is good, bad, important, trivial. You build mental frameworks and hope they hold under the weight of experience. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they collapse spectacularly, like a badly constructed IKEA bookcase. The problem of the criterion does not offer a tidy solution. That is part of its charm and its curse. It highlights the uncomfortable truth that certainty is an illusion. Every judgment rests on previous judgments that were themselves built on shifting sands. Some philosophers have tried to escape the loop by embracing skepticism. They argue that you should simply accept that you cannot know anything for certain and live with the discomfort. Of course, declaring that nothing can be known is itself a claim of knowledge, so the paradox politely sneaks back in through the side door. Pragmatists take a more laid-back approach. They suggest that while perfect knowledge may be impossible, functional knowledge is good enough. You may not know with absolute certainty that the stove is off, but checking 3 times before leaving the house feels close enough. This may be the only practical way to live with the problem of the criterion. Acknowledge the paradox, shrug, and get on with your life. No one has time to spiral into an existential crisis every time they choose a brand of toothpaste. In the end, the problem of the criterion stands as an eternal reminder that the quest for knowledge is both noble and deeply flawed. It pushes you to think critically, even when you know the answers may never come. So as you ponder the endless circle of what you know and how you know it, let me leave you with one final, deeply serious philosophical dilemma. If you are trying to choose the best restaurant for dinner, but cannot decide whether to pick based on online reviews, menu options, distance, or how fancy the photos look, have you not already satisfied the paradox by realizing you will just order pizza anyway? The Sorites raise a paradox. When one grain is never enough. Picture yourself standing in front of a tiny pile of sand. You add one grain. It is still not a heap. You add another. Still not a heap. You keep adding grain by grain until at some point you have a full heap. The problem? No one, not even the most dedicated philosopher with a clipboard, can tell you exactly when the transformation happens. Welcome to the Sorites raise a paradox, the ultimate argument for why even the smallest things can turn into the biggest headaches. The paradox gets its name from the Greek word Sorites, meaning heap. It was first proposed in ancient times, proving that people have been arguing about nonsense for far longer than they have been arguing on the internet. The idea is deceptively simple. If removing a single grain from a heap does not stop it from being a heap, and if adding a single grain to a non-heap does not instantly create a heap, how do you ever know when you have crossed the invisible line? You may think this sounds silly. That is because it is. It is also completely serious. The paradox exposes a flaw in the way you categorize vague concepts. Words like heap, bald, tall, rich, and old have no clear boundaries. They exist in that wonderfully useless gray area where logic goes to take an extended lunch break. Consider baldness. One hair on a head is definitely not bald, neither is 2, 3, or 10. Yet somewhere between 1 and 100,000 hairs, a person goes from full head of hair to bald. Try to pinpoint the exact hair that changes the label. You cannot. If you think you can, you are about to lose that argument faster than a cat avoids a bath. This is the core cruelty of the Sorites razor paradox. You want the world to be neat, labeled, and organized. The paradox points at your labels, laughs, and says, "Good luck with that." It also sneaks into your daily life far more than you would like to admit. When does a messy room officially become a disaster zone? At what point does a hobby become an obsession? How many missed deadlines does it take before your coworker earns the title chronically late? Legal systems wrestle with this constantly. What counts as reasonable doubt? How much force qualifies as excessive? At what point does a gathering become an illegal assembly? Laws require precision. Reality responds with a shrug and says, define precision. The Sorites raise a paradox shows how language is both powerful and deeply flawed. Words help you make sense of the world, but they rarely offer airtight definitions. You rely on context, shared understanding, and sometimes just the hope that the other person knows what you mean. This creates opportunities for endless loopholes. Ask a teenager to clean their room, and they will produce an interpretation of clean that belongs in a modern art gallery labeled chaos in 3 dimensions. Even science, the bastion of hard facts, cannot escape. Think about when a collection of molecules becomes a living organism, or when a planetesimal becomes a planet. Poor Pluto knows the pain of having definitions rewritten. One minute you are a full-fledged planet. The next, you are demoted to space rock with an identity crisis. The paradox becomes even more maddening when applied to morality. How many small lies make you a liar? How many acts of kindness make you a good person? Philosophers have tried to answer these questions, only to discover that morality, like piles of sand, refuses to stay in neat little boxes. Some thinkers have proposed solutions, but none offer complete satisfaction. One approach is epistemic tolerance. Accept that vague terms do not have sharp boundaries and live with the uncertainty. This works if you are comfortable with ambiguity. Most people are not. Another strategy involves assigning arbitrary cutoffs. Decide that exactly 5,000 grains equals a heap, or that 3 missed meetings qualifies as being unreliable. Congratulations, you have solved nothing. You have only moved the argument to y 5000, y3. There is also the fuzzy logic approach, which treats categories as gradual rather than absolute. It lets things be mostly a heap or kind of bold. Useful, yes. Satisfying? Hardly. Most people do not walk around saying, I am currently operating at 78% boldness. The Sorites razor paradox ultimately reveals your discomfort with the gradual. Your mind prefers sharp changes. On or off, yes or no, heap or not heap. Nature, annoyingly, prefers smooth transitions. It turns out the universe does not care about your need for clarity. Everyday decisions reflect this messiness. You decide when a friendship has faded, when a job is no longer worth keeping, or when a houseplant has officially died, usually somewhere between slightly wilted and botanical crime scene. None of these involve clear, objective criteria. What makes the paradox enduring is that it cannot be solved. It is not even meant to be solved. It exists to remind you that life is full of gray areas. You navigate by gut instinct, social norms, and the collective agreement to pretend the boundaries are clearer than they are. So next time you find yourself agonizing over whether a pile of laundry counts as laundry or an emergency, know that you are in the company of philosophers who have been stuck in this mental trap for over 2,000 years. Misery loves company, and so apparently do paradoxes. As you ponder this grain-by-grain dilemma, let me leave you with one last pressing question. If you keep eating chips one by one, and never consider yourself to have eaten the whole bag, does that mean you have successfully outwitted both the paradox and your diet? The prisoner's self-justification paradox. When everyone is innocent. Imagine a prison where every single inmate claims to be innocent. Not a single one admits guilt. You would think you accidentally walked into a convention of wrongly accused saints. This is the foundation of the prisoner's self-justification paradox. The strange, frustrating, and almost admirable ability of people to rationalize their actions to the point where even the guiltiest person becomes, at least in their own mind, the true victim. The paradox explores the blurry line between guilt and justification. It asks a question that society, law, and psychology have all failed to answer convincingly. When does a reason become a convenient excuse? Prisons, courtrooms, and human interactions in general are full of people who insist they had no choice, they were misunderstood, or they were set up. There is the person who claims, I did not steal. I was reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Another insists, I did not assault him. I was defending my honor. Somehow, every action, no matter how obviously wrong to outsiders, becomes morally defensible to the person who committed it. This is not limited to crime. People do this in relationships, at work, in traffic, and especially when dealing with return policies at retail stores. The employee who repeatedly shows up late? I was late because the universe clearly conspired against me. The friend who forgot your birthday? I did not forget. I was waiting for the perfect moment. The student who missed the deadline? I was building character through adversity. At the center of the paradox is the uncomfortable realization that most people view themselves as fundamentally good, even when their behavior says otherwise. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. You cannot see yourself as a bad person, so you invent explanations that allow your sense of decency to remain intact, even if the explanation would not hold up under even the mildest scrutiny. The mind becomes a courtroom where you are simultaneously the defendant, the defense attorney, and the judge. Unsurprisingly, you almost always rule in your own favor. The prisoner's self-justification. Paradox is not just about legal guilt. It applies to any scenario where people are caught doing something wrong and immediately begin crafting elaborate narratives to explain why they are not actually at fault. The paradox reveals how elastic morality can be when it is stretched to protect your self-image. Think about public scandals. A celebrity is caught breaking rules. The apology arrives promptly. Mistakes were made. Notice the clever phrasing. Mistakes, not I made mistakes. The passive voice works wonders when you are busy erasing personal responsibility with the finesse of an experienced magician. Even when people confess, they rarely do so without conditions. Yes, I did it, but I was under pressure. Or yes, I said that, but it was taken out of context. Context, in this case, seems to function as an invisibility cloak for accountability. The paradox becomes especially painful in the justice system. Juries must evaluate whether someone is guilty, knowing full well that the defendant may truly believe they did nothing wrong. Worse, the defendant may have convinced themselves so thoroughly that their story has become their truth. Some philosophers and legal scholars argue that this ability to rationalize is part of what makes us human. Unlike animals, who act largely on instinct, humans can craft stories about their actions, rearrange facts, and justify nearly anything. A lion does not feel guilty for hunting a gazelle. A person, on the other hand, can explain how parking in a handicapped spot was totally justified because I was only going to be 5 minutes. What makes the prisoner's self-justification paradox so maddening is that it is almost impossible to detect from the inside. You are too close to your own thoughts to see when you are bending reality to suit your narrative. It is much easier to spot in others. You can instantly recognize when someone is talking themselves into believing their bad behavior was justified. You shake your head at the excuses. Meanwhile, you conveniently forget the time you used the exact same logic to rationalize keeping the change from the vending machine. There is no easy way out of the paradox. One solution would be for people to possess perfect self-awareness and brutal honesty. That would require a level of personal discipline rarely found outside of fictional monks or extremely judgmental life coaches. Another strategy is accountability. Surround yourself with people who are not afraid to call you out. The friend who raises an eyebrow when you say, "I only ate one cookie," while brushing crumbs off your shirt is worth their weight in gold. The paradox also shows up in business and politics. Companies caught in unethical practices often pivot immediately to damage control. "We value our customers and take these concerns seriously," they announce, before quietly adjusting the legal fine print. Politicians embroiled in scandals offer master classes in self-justification. "I did not lie. I simply communicated alternative facts." Even small everyday moments are fertile ground for the paradox. You skip the gym. "I needed rest. Recovery is important." You buy something expensive. "It was on sale. Technically, I saved money." You binge watch an entire season in one sitting. I am staying informed about modern storytelling. The prisoner's self-justification paradox reveals the astonishing creativity people possess when it comes to dodging responsibility. It also serves as a reminder that no matter how airtight your excuse seems, someone else probably sees right through it. So where does this leave you? Is there any way to avoid falling into the paradox? Probably not completely. You are human. You will occasionally justify your bad decisions. The best you can hope for is to catch yourself more often and maybe cut down on the number of times you attempt to explain why you did not send that email because of technical difficulties. Translation: I forgot. As you reflect on this strange little mental escape hatch we all possess, let me leave you with one last very real dilemma. If you finish the last piece of cake and claim you did it to prevent it from going stale, have you not just reached the absolute pinnacle of self-justification mastery? The circle of doubt paradox. When questioning becomes a full-time job, you wake up in the morning and ask yourself a simple question. How do I know the world around me is real? The coffee smells real. The bed feels real. The phone alarm that has been going off for the last 10 minutes is definitely too real. Yet the seed of doubt is there. What if everything is an illusion? What if your senses, memories, and even your thoughts are lying to you? Welcome to the circle of doubt paradox, where every answer leads to more questions and certainty becomes a myth you vaguely remember from a less complicated time. The paradox works like this. To be absolutely certain of anything, you must first be sure that you have the tools to verify it. To be sure of your tools, you must verify that they work properly. To verify that, you need even more tools, which themselves require verification. The result? You are trapped in an endless feedback loop of suspicion. The The circle of doubt spins on, politely refusing to let you get off. Philosophers have spent centuries falling into this mental hamster wheel. They proudly call it radical skepticism, which is a fancy way of saying, what if everything you think you know is wrong? The only thing they can agree on is that no one really agrees on anything. The circle of doubt paradox messes with you because it goes after your most basic assumption, trust. You trust your senses to interpret the world. You trust your memory to recall information. You trust your reasoning abilities to sort facts from fiction. The paradox slowly peels away these comforts like a very determined onion. Take your senses, sight, hearing, touch. They have betrayed you before. You see mirages. You hear your phone vibrate when it did not. You touch something hot and think, that was probably fine. It was not. Your senses are good, but not perfect. So can you trust them? Memory is no better. You have forgotten names, faces, birthdays, and appointments you swore you would never forget. If memory can fail for small things, what about the big things? Are you sure that vacation in Italy happened? Or was it just an elaborate dream with excellent pizza? Even reason, the tool you cling to when all else fails, is not immune. People misinterpret data, confuse correlation with causation, and make logical errors so confidently that you almost have to admire the commitment. The circle of doubt. Paradox takes these cracks and widens them until you start questioning whether you exist at all. You think, I must exist because I am thinking. Then you wonder, but how do I know my thinking is not part of someone else's dream? Congratulations, you have just won a front-row seat to your own existential crisis. The paradox shows up in less dramatic ways too. You read a news article. Is it true? You check the source. Can you trust the source? You check another source. What if both are wrong? You decide to check 5 more sources. The next thing you know, you are 3 hours deep into research and still cannot decide whether the event even happened. Buying something online offers a similar experience. You read the reviews. Some are glowing, others are scathing. One person says the product changed their life. Another says it burst into flames. You want to believe someone, but the circle of doubt taps you on the shoulder and says, or maybe they are all lying. The paradox thrives on the impossibility of total verification. No fact exists in a vacuum. Every piece of information relies on a chain of assumptions, and any weak link drags the whole thing into question. Scientists have tried to address this by focusing on probability over certainty. They accept that some level of doubt is always present. Experiments are repeated, peer-reviewed, and published with disclaimers. Yet even science operates under the silent agreement that no result is ever truly final. There is always the chance that new evidence will overturn the old conclusion. The legal system faces the same dilemma. Convictions are based on beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond all doubt. Courts acknowledge that absolute certainty is impossible, so they settle for a standard that feels good enough. The circle of doubt remains in the background, quietly heckling. Even daily decisions reflect this paradox. You pick a restaurant. Was it the best choice? Could the place next door have been better? Should you have cooked at home? Should you have eaten at all? The circle of doubt waits patiently at your table, sipping your water. The human brain tries to cope with this constant uncertainty by creating shortcuts, heuristics, gut feelings, and quick judgments. These work most of the time, but fail spectacularly when the stakes are high or when the information is too complex to process quickly. There is no escaping the circle of doubt completely. It is built into the nature of thinking itself. Once you become aware of it, you cannot unsee it. Every answer feels like it needs a footnote. Every decision feels provisional. Every certainty feels suspiciously flimsy. Yet somehow, life goes on. You learn to live with uncertainty. You accept that you will never have perfect knowledge, and that sometimes the best choice is to act anyway. Paralysis by analysis only ensures you never leave the starting line. The circle of doubt. Paradox does not offer solutions. It offers perspective. It reminds you that certainty is a luxury, not a guarantee. It pushes you to question, verify, reconsider, and most importantly, to stay humble about the limits of what you know. So as you ponder the infinite loop of not knowing if you know what you know, let me leave you with one final, vitally important question. If you are standing in front of your open fridge for the 5th time and still cannot decide what you want to eat, does that make you a philosopher, or just someone who has given up on the concept of dinner entirely? The Sorites voting paradox. When no single vote counts but every vote counts, it is election day. You stand in line, surrounded by people staring at their phones and pretending not to exist. Eventually, you get to the booth, stare at the names, and fill in your ballot. You know your single vote will not tip the scales. You also know that if everyone thought like you, no one would vote at all. Welcome to the Sorites voting paradox, the sneaky little conundrum that makes you question whether you just wasted your time or saved democracy. The paradox works like this. If one vote will not change the result, then surely no individual vote matters. If no individual vote matters, then why vote? But if everyone reasons that way and stays home, no one votes, and society quietly collapses into chaos. It is a classic case of what happens when individual logic breaks collective systems. The name comes from the same line of thinking behind the pile of sand paradox. Just as one grain of sand does not make a heap, one vote does not make an election. Yet enough grains make a heap, and enough votes elect a president, mayor, or treasurer of the local pigeon enthusiast club. The problem is no one can pinpoint the exact moment when not enough suddenly becomes enough. The Sorites voting paradox highlights the frustrating gap between personal impact and group outcome. Individually, your vote feels smaller than the crumbs left behind by a particularly careless squirrel. Collectively, votes create leaders, laws, and policies that shape nations. Your brain knows this. Your brain also knows you could have stayed home and binge-watched something. This paradox pops up anytime an action seems insignificant at the personal level, but becomes crucial when repeated by the group. Recycling one bottle does not save the planet. Skipping one workout does not ruin your health. Yet millions of people making the same small decisions change everything. The Sorites voting paradox becomes especially tricky because it plays dirty with your sense of responsibility. On one hand, you feel morally obligated to participate. On the other hand, you also know deep down that whether you vote or not, the election outcome probably will not depend on you. It is a psychological tug-of-war that leaves you exhausted before you even finish marking the ballot. Politicians and activists know this, which is why they spend so much time convincing you that your vote absolutely does matter. They are technically right. Every vote matters in the same way that every raindrop matters in a flood. You cannot have the flood without the raindrops, but no single drop is responsible for the soaked carpet. Statistically, the odds of your one vote deciding a major national election are about the same as being struck by lightning while holding a winning lottery ticket and being hugged by a friendly bear at the same time. It does happen, but not to you. So why vote? Because voting is not just about deciding an outcome. It is a symbolic act. It is about participating in the process, fulfilling your duty, and avoiding the nagging guilt of having to explain later why you let the raccoon enthusiast candidate take over city council unopposed. The paradox also exposes a weakness in how we think about contribution and fairness. People like rewards to match effort. In voting, you invest effort, standing in line, researching candidates, remembering where you put your voter registration card, pretending you read the sample ballot, and get no immediate reward. The paradox leaves you stuck between wanting to make a difference and knowing you cannot see the difference you made. It does not help that modern elections often feel like they are already decided before you even show up. Polls, media predictions, and early results drain your sense of urgency. The Sorites voting paradox whispers, "You can sit this one out. Someone else has it covered." But if everyone listens, there is no one left to cover it. That is the elegant cruelty of the paradox. It takes perfectly reasonable individual behavior and flips it into collective disaster. The same pattern shows up everywhere: littering, conservation, workplace behavior. "My little action will not matter" is the first step on the road to "How did this become such a mess?" The paradox has no satisfying solution, which is why philosophers love it and citizens quietly despise it. You cannot escape the basic math. Your vote probably will not decide the election, yet the system depends on you believing it might. Some suggest redefining the value of voting. Think of it not as an act to change the outcome, but as a contribution to the legitimacy of the process. The more people vote, the stronger the system looks. That works fine until you realize legitimacy is another vague concept no one can really measure. Others argue for compulsory voting. If everyone must vote, the paradox loses some of its bite. Countries like Australia have tried this. It works, but it also forces people who know nothing and care less to participate, sometimes with creative results. Spoiler: a surprising number of ballots get turned into elaborate doodles of kangaroos. Then there is the most pragmatic approach. Just vote anyway. Accept the paradox. Embrace the futility with style. Treat voting like flossing. You know it probably will not change the big picture dramatically, but you do it because you know it is the right thing to do, and you prefer not to explain to your dentist or your grandchildren why you opted out. The Sorites voting paradox ultimately reminds you that personal actions, no matter how small, become powerful when multiplied. The paradox will always exist, quietly gnawing at your sense of purpose. The trick is to acknowledge it, sigh heavily, and vote anyway. So as you reflect on this philosophical exercise in frustrating logic, let me leave you with one final, completely reasonable question. If you show up to vote just to prove a point, and spend more time taking a selfie with your sticker than actually marking the ballot, have you not just contributed to democracy in the most modern way possible? The lottery winner's paradox. When luck becomes a curse, you paid for. There you are, holding a cheap little piece of paper covered in random numbers you barely remember choosing. The announcer reads the winning numbers. You stare, blink, stare again. You have won. Against impossible odds, you are now richer than you were 5 minutes ago. Everyone congratulates you. Strangers smile at you. Life is perfect, except it very quickly is not. You have just walked headfirst into the lottery winner's paradox, the strange, cruel twist where winning the jackpot feels like the worst thing that ever happened to you. The paradox starts with simple logic. Money solves problems. More money solves more problems. Therefore, the person who wins a huge lottery prize should be the happiest, most worry-free person on earth. Reality responds with a sarcastic cough and proceeds to prove you wrong. Studies, news reports, and countless cautionary tales reveal an unsettling trend. Lottery winners often end up bankrupt, miserable, or both. Family members appear out of nowhere with urgent needs. Long-lost friends rediscover your number. Strangers send letters requesting financial help for extremely personal reasons involving medical bills, lost pets, or their startup idea for glow-in-the-dark potato chips. Winning a life-changing amount of money sounds thrilling until you realize it comes with a full-time job you never applied for. Managing expectations, saying no gracefully, figuring out taxes you never thought you would have to worry about, and trying to remember what life felt like before every conversation involved money. This is the first layer of the paradox. The very thing you believed would free you ends up trapping you. You can quit your job, but now you have no structured routine. You can buy a mansion, but suddenly you need a staff and security. You can travel the world, but you no longer know who actually wants to travel with you because they like you and not your wallet. The second layer is psychological. Lottery winners often experience what researchers call hedonic adaptation. Your brain gets used to the new reality frighteningly fast. What was once unthinkable luxury becomes just normal. The private jet becomes the taxi. The designer clothes become your new sweatpants. The excitement fades, but the complications remain. Then there is the matter of guilt. Winners frequently report feeling awkward about their good fortune, especially when others around them struggle financially. You cannot exactly complain about the stress of managing your millions at the family barbecue without getting some very specific looks. Relationships also become a minefield. Money alters dynamics in strange ways. Friends who once shared cheap pizza nights with you now expect fancy dinners. Relatives start keeping mental spreadsheets of who got what. every gift becomes a potential source of resentment. You start to miss the days when no one asked you for anything except a ride home. The paradox becomes clear. Winning what everyone dreams of can actually take away what people value most: trust, privacy, purpose, and stability. Your external circumstances improve dramatically. Your internal world becomes unrecognizable. Of course, not every winner spirals into chaos. Some manage their windfall well, hire smart advisors, and quietly adjust to their new lives. These people exist, but they rarely make headlines. Disaster is more interesting than competence, especially when it comes with photos of gold-plated swimming pools. The lottery winner's paradox taps into a deeper human truth. People believe that solving one problem will eliminate all problems. It rarely works that way. Solving money issues often creates brand new, much weirder problems you never imagined. Think of it like upgrading your phone. You expect everything to be perfect. Instead, you spend hours learning a new interface, losing photos, resetting passwords, and wondering if the new model was even worth it. The paradox also raises awkward philosophical questions. Was the winner lucky or unlucky? Does the universe have a twisted sense of humor? Is winning a bad thing if it destroys what you had before? Do you blame the money, or do you blame yourself for mishandling it? There is no universal answer. Some would argue that the problem is not the money itself, but the lack of preparation. Lottery winners receive wealth without the experience of earning or managing it. It is like handing a Formula One race car to someone who just got their Learner S permit. The car is not the problem. The driver is not ready. Others say the problem is social. Society attaches absurd expectations to wealth. Rich people must appear generous, responsible, glamorous, humble, charitable, and somehow still relatable. It is like being asked to juggle flaming swords while smiling politely and not sweating. The paradox forces you to consider whether there is such a thing as too much luck. Can you overdose on good fortune? The answer seems to be yes, at least when the fortune arrives in a single, overwhelming flood rather than a steady, manageable stream. There are ways people try to avoid the worst of it. Some winners stay anonymous, although that is not always legally allowed. Some immediately donate large chunks to charity to reduce both the balance and the stress. Some quietly relocate and rebuild their lives away from the spotlight. None of these strategies completely eliminate the paradox. They just reduce the volume of chaos. Money changes things. Once changed, things rarely return to the way they were. The lottery winner's paradox serves as a permanent reminder that external success does not automatically create internal happiness. The two may not even be on speaking terms. Wealth can provide comfort, security, and access to opportunities, but it cannot buy peace of mind, authentic relationships, or a sense of meaning. The irony? Many people still buy lottery tickets, fully aware of the paradox. Hope is stubborn that way. You convince yourself you would be the exception. You would handle it differently. You would not let the money change you. History and countless interviews with regretful winners suggest otherwise. So, as you reflect on this strange paradox of luck, let me leave you with one last perfectly valid question. If you win the lottery and immediately spend half of it buying more lottery tickets to increase your chances, have you not just achieved the most expensive possible way to misunderstand probability? The drinker paradox, when logic outsmarts common sense. It is happy hour. The bar is full. People are chatting, laughing, and enjoying their drinks. Somewhere in this crowd, a philosopher sits quietly, staring at his glass and thinking, I have just discovered a way to guarantee that someone here is drinking just because someone else is drinking. No, he is not drunk yet. He has simply stumbled into the strange but completely valid logic puzzle known as the drinker paradox. The paradox is as simple as it is irritating. It goes like this. In any non-empty bar, there exists at least one person such that if that person is drinking, then everyone in the bar is drinking. Your first reaction is probably, that makes absolutely no sense. That is exactly what makes it a paradox. The statement is mathematically true. It is also completely ridiculous when you try to apply it to real life. That combination is what earns it a permanent spot on the list of puzzles designed to confuse, annoy, and impress people at parties where the music is too loud to talk about anything normal. Here is how it works. Imagine the bar has only two people, you and your friend. If your friend is drinking, then the condition is satisfied. If your friend is not drinking, then you, the only other person, must be drinking, which still satisfies the condition. The rule holds either way. Now expand this to a crowded bar. Pick the person who is drinking the least or not at all. If that person is drinking, everyone is drinking. If they are not drinking, then the paradox does not even apply to them, because the logic only cares about if they are drinking. The clever loophole? It does not say they must be drinking. It only says if. The statement remains technically true no matter what happens. The drinker paradox plays a mean trick on your sense of cause and effect. You instinctively think it claims one person's action causes everyone else to drink. It does not. It simply uses the sneaky rules of logic to create a condition that sounds profound, but says almost nothing useful. This is a classic example of a tautology dressed up as a deep thought. It is logically airtight and practically useless, like a beautifully designed umbrella that works perfectly as long as it never rains. The paradox reveals something unsettling about how easily language can blur into nonsense under the cover of formal logic. Most people hear the statement and assume it describes behavior. In reality, it describes a set of possibilities. Whether anyone drinks or not, the statement stubbornly stands there, completely satisfied with itself. You might be tempted to test it at your next night out. You watch everyone in the room, waiting for the mysterious drinker whose drinking guarantees universal drinking. Spoiler, you will not find them. The paradox does not identify anyone specific. It just assures you they exist. Somewhere, maybe, or maybe not. The drinker paradox also highlights how human thinking struggles with conditional statements. If-then logic is everywhere, contracts, laws, instructions, but your brain prefers concrete examples. Abstract reasoning makes people uncomfortable, which is why most people nod politely at this paradox, then quietly change the subject. Mathematicians, of course, love it. They appreciate how it exposes the difference between formal truth and practical truth. The statement is logically valid within the structure of classical logic. It just refuses to translate into anything you can use at a bar without being asked to leave. The paradox belongs to a family of problems that play with assumptions. It assumes the bar is non-empty and that at least one person exists whose drinking status will satisfy the condition. It cleverly avoids saying how you are supposed to identify this person or what good that information does you. In daily life, you see similar absurdities. Everyone in the office is working because if Bob is working, then everyone is working. Congratulations, Bob. You have just become both the scapegoat and the savior of productivity without lifting a finger. The drinker paradox may be silly, but it does serve a purpose. It reminds you that statements can be technically true while still being functionally useless. You can win the argument and still lose the point. This happens every day in politics, legal debates, and customer service phone calls. Some philosophers argue that the drinker paradox represents the limits of formal logic when applied to messy human reality. You can create perfect systems on paper that immediately collapse when exposed to the unpredictability of human behavior. Others simply admire it as a playful example of how logic can surprise you. It looks like nonsense, acts like nonsense, yet it cannot be disproven. It stands forever smug, like the friend who insists they were technically correct on a tiny detail no one else cared about. There is no real solution, because the paradox does not present a problem that needs solving. It is not broken, it is just annoying. You cannot fix something that was never trying to work in the first place. In the end, the drinker paradox is a perfect example of philosophy at its most mischievous. It forces you to question not only what you know, but how you know it, and why you assumed you understood the question in the first place. So as you sip whatever beverage you happen to be enjoying, let me leave you with one last question that might just be the only useful takeaway from this puzzle. If you go to a bar and order water, but drink it out of a fancy glass with a lemon wedge. Have you not still managed to confuse everyone into thinking you are living your best life? The Self-Amendment Paradox. When rules rewrite themselves and forget what they were. Rules exist to bring order to chaos. They tell you what to do, what not to do, and how not to do what you were thinking of doing. Now imagine a rule that has the power to rewrite itself, including the part where it says it can rewrite itself. You have just stepped into the bizarre legal labyrinth of the Self-Amendment Paradox, where a rule can change itself out of existence and leave you wondering whether it was ever there to begin with. At first glance, it sounds like something out of an overcomplicated board game designed to ruin friendships. But the paradox is very real, especially in legal systems, contracts, and constitutions. It asks the unsettling question: can a system of rules legally modify itself in ways that affect the rules of modification? Think of it like this. Imagine a club that has one rule. This club may change any rule at any time. Simple. One day the members vote to change that rule to say, this club may no longer change any rule at any time. You see the problem? Did they just remove the ability to change the rule? Was the change even valid if the rule vanished the moment they voted? Congratulations, you are now stuck in the philosophical equivalent of trying to bite your own teeth. The paradox shows up in law more often than you would like to believe. Take a constitution. Most have clauses that explain how amendments can be made. Some go further and declare that certain parts cannot be amended. But what happens when lawmakers try to amend the clause that says what can and cannot be amended? The Self-Amendment Paradox waves from the sidelines and smiles patiently. The issue boils down to this: if a rule gives you the power to amend rules, and you use that power to change the amendment rule itself, are you still playing by the original rules, or have you quietly detonated the entire system? Legal scholars and philosophers have wrestled with this for decades. The arguments usually boil down to two camps. The first camp says, of course you can change the amendment rule. Rules exist to serve people, not the other way around. The second camp calmly responds, if you can change the rule that changes rules, you can basically rewrite anything, so why pretend you have rules at all? This is where the paradox becomes both elegant and deeply annoying. It shows how legal systems rely on stability and flexibility at the same time, two things that barely get along on a good day. You can see echoes of the Self-Amendment Paradox in everyday life. Consider workplace policies. One week the office dress code states no jeans. The next week management amends the policy to allow casual Fridays. A month later, they amend it again to ban jeans on Fridays because someone took casual a little too far. The rule that governs the rules never really settles down. Or think about software updates. You agree to the terms of service, which include a clause saying the company can change the terms of service at any time. You blink, and the new version now says you have also agreed to share your browsing history with a team of over-enthusiastic data analysts. Did you agree? Technically, yes. Comfortably, no. Even family rules fall victim. A parent announces, from now on, the bedtime rule is flexible based on behavior. A child responds by being on their best behavior, expecting a later bedtime. The parent then changes the rule to bedtime is non-negotiable. Cue the sound of young minds realizing how powerless they truly are. The Self-Amendment Paradox shows how power dynamics rely on the illusion of consistency. If the person or group who writes the rules can also rewrite the conditions under which they write the rules, you do not have rules. You have suggestions wearing expensive suits. Philosophers have pointed out that even the act of creating an unchangeable rule is suspect. If you declare something unchangeable, have you not used your amendment power to set that condition? Could a future generation simply use the same power to undeclare the unchangeable part? The paradox has a habit of quietly folding back on itself like a legal origami nightmare. Attempts to solve this mess usually involve creating meta-rules, rules about how to change the rules. These rarely work, because someone will inevitably suggest amending the meta-rules. The Self-Amendment Paradox stands quietly in the background, sipping tea and waiting for the chaos to resume. There is no clean way out. Legal systems tend to muddle through by pretending the paradox does not exist. Courts invent doctrines about implied limitations, original intent, or democratic principles.
It works well enough until someone creative decides to test just how far the system can bend before it breaks. The paradox also serves as a warning. Any organization, system, or society that gives itself unlimited power to change its own rules risks losing the very legitimacy those rules are supposed to create.
Authority built on endlessly shifting foundations eventually feels less like governance and more like improv comedy with higher stakes. And yet the paradox exists for a reason. No system can predict every future scenario. The power to amend rules allows societies to adapt, fix mistakes, and move forward. And the danger lies not in the ability to change, but in forgetting why the rules existed in the first place. The self-amendment paradox has no tidy resolution. It is the price you pay for having structured systems created by flawed creatures who insist on tinkering with the instructions even after the box says, "Do not modify." So as you reflect on the absurd beauty of a rule system that can rewrite itself into oblivion, let me leave you with one final question that feels strangely relevant to both law and everyday life. If you write yourself a to-do list and include "rewrite the to-do list" as the first item, have you not just invented the most efficient possible way to avoid doing anything useful at all? Meno's Paradox. When you cannot search for what you cannot name, you are standing in the kitchen, staring into the refrigerator. You have forgotten what you came for. You close the door, then you open it again, as if this time the object of your forgotten quest will magically reveal itself. Congratulations. You have just lived through the everyday version of Meno's Paradox, the ancient philosophical dilemma that asks, how can you search for something if you have no idea what it is? The paradox comes from Plato's dialogue Meno, where Socrates casually ruins someone's day by pointing out the problem of knowledge and discovery. If you know what you are looking for, then you do not need to search. If you do not know what you are looking for, then how will you ever know when you have found it? It is the intellectual equivalent of being told to find that thing over somewhere over there. You ask, what thing? And the helpful reply is, you will know it when you see it. That is not helpful. That is how people end up wandering around hardware stores looking lost and increasingly questioning their life choices. The beauty of Meno's Paradox is how fast it shatters your sense of competence. It sounds like a riddle designed to humble even the most overconfident know-it-all. You thought you were smart until you realize every attempt to learn something depends on already having some prior idea of what it is you are supposed to be learning. Think about the process of learning a new skill. You decide you want to learn how to cook. Great idea. But what does learn to cook mean? If you have no concept of recipes, timing, flavor balance, or how not to set your kitchen on fire, where do you even begin? The first attempt often looks more like performance art than meal preparation. The paradox applies to everyday decision-making too. You want a new car, but what kind? You have no idea. You look at models, colors, features. Slowly, you develop criteria you did not even know you had. By the time you finally buy something, you convince yourself it was what you were searching for all along. Spoiler, you were winging it the entire time. The modern world thrives on people living through Meno's Paradox without realizing it. Every advertisement exists to suggest you are missing something vital, but have no idea what that something is until you see it. This is how you end up buying kitchen gadgets you never needed, scented candles you cannot pronounce, and 3 different apps to remind you to hydrate. Even relationships fall victim to the paradox. People often say they are looking for the one. But what does that mean? How will you know you have found them? You go on awkward dates, endure bizarre conversations, and at some point, you decide that this person must be it. Maybe they laughed at the same dumb movie you like. Congratulations, you have solved the unsolvable puzzle through sheer stubbornness. Socrates, being Socrates, suggested that the solution lies in something he called recollection. His idea was that you are not really learning new knowledge. You are remembering knowledge your soul already knew before you were born. a bold claim. It also conveniently removes any personal responsibility for not studying harder. Modern thinkers tend to go with a less mystical answer. Learning is a process of trial and error. You may not know exactly what you are looking for, but through experience, hints, and sometimes blind luck, you stumble your way toward answers. It is like assembling a jigsaw puzzle without the box lid, hoping the weird green piece eventually makes sense. Meno's paradox shows up in science, art, exploration, and pretty much every human endeavor. Think of early explorers setting sail to unknown lands. They did not know where they were going, what they would find, or if they would even survive. Yet somehow they named continents, mapped coastlines, and invented the concept of close enough when it came to accuracy. The same applies to inventors and innovators. Nobody knew they needed a smartphone until someone built one. Now you cannot go 20 minutes without checking it, mostly to confirm that nobody important has messaged you. The paradox reveals the strange relationship between ignorance and curiosity. You cannot search for something if you already know it, but you also cannot search if you have no starting point at all. The trick is to start with vague ideas, make a mess, get confused, regroup, and try again. This is called learning. You see it in childhood. A toddler learning to walk does not know what walking is. They try, fall, try again, fall again, and repeat the process with relentless optimism. Adults would give up after the third fall and declare walking overrated. Children just keep going until they succeed, mostly because they do not know it is supposed to be difficult. Meno's paradox does not offer a solution. That is the point. It exists to remind you that the process of discovery is messy, frustrating, and hilariously unpredictable. No one actually knows what they are doing at first. They just pretend convincingly until they figure it out. The paradox also teaches you to embrace uncertainty. Searching without knowing exactly what you want forces you to stay open-minded. It encourages creativity, exploration, and the occasional accidental breakthrough. Some of the best inventions, scientific discoveries, and terrible fashion trends have come from people chasing vague ideas into unexpected territory. So the next time you find yourself wandering aimlessly in a store, scrolling through job listings, or debating whether your life goal is even a real thing, take comfort in the fact that you are living proof of Meno's paradox. Everyone else is faking it too. As you ponder the elegant frustration of searching for what you do not know you are searching for, let me leave you with one final question that perfectly sums up this strange little dilemma. If you walk into a room and forget why you went in, then wander around aimlessly pretending to be looking for something, have you not just become a living, breathing tribute to ancient philosophy? The paradox of the stone. When omnipotence backs itself into a corner. Imagine sitting across from an all-powerful being. You know, the kind that can do anything, anywhere, anytime. You pause, then ask the question that has annoyed theologians, philosophers, and more than a few barroom debaters for centuries. Can you create a stone so heavy that even you cannot lift it? The being freezes. You have just triggered the paradox of the stone, the ultimate trap question that exposes the awkward limits of unlimited power. At first glance, it feels clever, like something a smug genie would whisper just before vanishing in a puff of smoke. If the being says yes, then they cannot lift it, meaning they are not all-powerful. If they say no, then they cannot create the stone, which also means they are not all-powerful. It is the perfect checkmate move. Or so it seems. The paradox of the stone plays with your understanding of omnipotence. Most people assume all-powerful means able to do absolutely anything, no exceptions, no fine print. The paradox steps in, politely clears its throat, and says, define anything. The problem is that some tasks are logically impossible. You cannot draw a square circle. You cannot make a married bachelor. You cannot create a number that is both even and odd at the same time. The paradox of the stone asks whether an all-powerful being should be able to perform even the nonsensical, self-contradictory tasks. Theologians have danced around this dilemma with all the enthusiasm of someone trying to defuse a bomb with oven mitts. Some argue that true omnipotence only applies to what is logically possible. A being cannot be expected to violate logic itself, because logic is not a thing you can bend like steel or time. Others disagree and insist that any limitation, even logical, disqualifies you from wearing the all-powerful crown. This leads to a circular argument that philosophers absolutely love and normal people absolutely avoid. If an all-powerful being cannot violate logic, are they bound by it, or are they choosing to respect it? If they choose, then they are above it. If they are bound, then logic itself must be even more powerful, which makes it the real star of the show. The paradox of the stone has practical cousins in daily life. You have probably faced a version of it without realizing. Someone says, "Be spontaneous right now." That is an impossible order. Or you are told, "Ignore this instruction." You cannot obey without disobeying. It is the same annoying flavor of contradiction. You see it in software too. Programmers are asked to make it do exactly what I want, even when I do not know what I want. The paradox laughs quietly in the corner. The paradox also messes with language. You ask for an irresistible force meeting an immovable object. Congratulations. You have just asked for two things that cannot logically coexist. One of them must lose, which means it was never truly irresistible or immovable in the first place. In the world of superhero movies, the paradox of the stone lurks just off-screen. The hero is declared unstoppable. The villain is called unbreakable. You know one of them will be proven very stoppable or very breakable by the time the credits roll. The writers just hope you do not notice the contradiction. So what does this mean for the idea of omnipotence? Some philosophers propose redefining it. Instead of able to do absolutely anything, they suggest able to do anything that can be done. It is a subtle but important distinction that prevents you from wandering into logical impossibility land. This definition lets you escape the stone paradox with dignity intact. The being cannot create a stone so heavy that they cannot lift it, not because of a flaw in their power, but because the request itself makes no sense. It is like asking them to create a smell that tastes like the number 7. Others argue that omnipotence includes the ability to self-limit. The being could create the stone and then choose to relinquish the ability to lift it, purely by choice. It is the cosmic equivalent of tying one hand behind your back just to prove a point. The debate remains unresolved, mostly because no one has managed to get an actual all-powerful being to sit down for an interview. In a way, the paradox of the stone serves as a reminder that words and concepts can only stretch so far before they snap. Your brain loves to imagine extremes: infinite space, endless time, unlimited power. The paradox exposes how quickly those ideas fall apart when you poke them with even a basic logic stick. Despite its frustrating nature, the paradox of the stone is not just a cheap trick question. It forces you to think critically about what you mean when you say anything. It challenges lazy definitions and reminds you that even the grandest ideas are still shaped by the limits of language and logic. You experience this every time you promise yourself you will do everything this weekend. Clean the house, call everyone back, catch up on reading, learn a new language. By Sunday night, you have successfully taken a long nap and watched 2 videos of raccoons stealing snacks. Once again, omnipotence eludes you. So as you contemplate the impossibility of creating a stone that cannot be lifted by someone who can lift anything, let me leave you with one final question that captures the spirit of this delightfully unsolvable puzzle. If you pile laundry on your bed until it is so heavy you cannot sleep there, have you not just achieved your own domestic version of the paradox of the stone? Godel's Incompleteness Theorem. When even math admits defeat, there are people who believe that math holds all the answers, that math is pure, perfect, and immune to the chaos that plagues everything else. Those people probably have not met Kurt Godel. In 1931, this quietly brilliant logician stepped up, looked at mathematics with all its smug certainty, and calmly said, "You are incomplete." Godel's incompleteness. Theorem shattered the dream of ultimate mathematical order, with all the grace of a wrecking ball wrapped in polite footnotes. The theorem sounds complicated because it is, but the core idea is surprisingly brutal. In any system complex enough to include basic arithmetic, there are true statements that cannot be proven within that system. Translation. No matter how many rules, axioms, and formulas you write down, there will always be facts that you know are true, but cannot be explained or proven using only the rules of your system. It is like playing a board game and suddenly realizing there are moves no one told you about, and no amount of checking the rulebook will help. Godel basically told mathematicians that their beloved rulebook would forever have blank pages hidden between the printed ones. The theorem hits where it hurts. Up until Godel, many thought that mathematics could one day explain everything. It was the grand project, create a perfect set of axioms, and every single mathematical truth could be derived from them like clockwork. Godel walked in, smiled, and whispered, "Not going to happen." He did this with a stroke of genius called self-reference. He crafted a statement that essentially said, "This statement cannot be proven true." If it could be proven, the system would be inconsistent, because a false statement was proven. If it could not be proven, then the system was incomplete, because a true statement existed without proof. Either way, the system loses. You might be thinking, that is a cheap trick. You are right, and that is what makes it brilliant. Godel weaponized logic against itself. His theorem did not break math, but it proved that math could never be fully whole. The implications are enormous. It means there are limits to what you can ever know with absolute certainty. It means that even the most perfect, carefully built structures of logic have holes in them so small you do not see them until you fall straight through. The Incompleteness theorem has been called the most important mathematical discovery of the 20th century. It launched thousands of debates, books, and nervous breakdowns. It is the reason your calculator can be right 99.99% of the time and still be fundamentally incomplete. You experience versions of this paradox every day, even if you do not realize it. You try to organize your life. You make rules for work, fitness, relationships. There is always an exception you did not plan for. A project that defies your workflow. A recipe that turns into an edible crime scene. A rule like always be on time that collides with the subway decided to take the scenic route today. Godel's theorem also explains why computer programs, no matter how sophisticated, cannot catch every possible error. There will always be scenarios that the code simply cannot account for within the bounds of its original design. Programmers know this, which is why they drink so much coffee and stare at their screens like they have seen the abyss. The theorem even messes with philosophy and science. It suggests that the dream of a theory of everything that explains the universe completely and without contradiction may be nothing more than a cosmic inside joke. The universe might be playing by rules that it will never fully share with you, no matter how many particle colliders you build. There have been attempts to wiggle around the implications. Mathematicians have suggested enlarging the system, adding more axioms. The problem? The new, bigger system then suffers from the same incompleteness problem. It is like patching a hole in your boat and discovering the patch comes with its own hole. Godel's theorem forces you to accept a deeply uncomfortable truth. Certainty is overrated. The quest for absolute knowledge will never end, because there will always be truths that exist just outside the boundaries of what you can prove. Yet there is something oddly beautiful about that. It means the universe will always have mysteries. There will always be new questions, new puzzles, and new reasons for smart people to lose sleep while scribbling equations on whiteboards. Some find this unsettling, others find it liberating. After all, if everything could be known and proven, the adventure would be over. Godel made sure the adventure stays open-ended forever. It also teaches you not to trust systems too much. Systems are helpful, but they will always fail at the edges. A checklist will miss something. A flowchart will forget a step. A foolproof plan will meet a better fool. Godel predicted it before most of us had even invented the spreadsheets we now argue with. You can even spot Godel's handiwork in conversations. Ever heard someone say, "I always lie"? Think about it. If they are telling the truth, then they are lying. If they are lying, then they are telling the truth. It is the same logical twist that made Godel's theorem possible. In the end, Godel's incompleteness theorem does not destroy math or logic. It humbles them. It reminds you that no system, no matter how clever, will ever close the book completely. There will always be a blank page waiting to be filled by the next curious mind. So as you contemplate the paradox of knowing there are things you will never know, let me leave you with one final question that feels like the perfect tribute to Godel's legacy. If your to-do list includes finish the to-do list, and you never finish it because you cannot finish listing the things you need to list, have you not just achieved peak incompleteness without ever leaving your desk? Russell's no-class paradox. When categorizing things destroys the category. There is something deeply satisfying about organizing things. You alphabetize your books, sort your spices, label your storage bins. It feels good, clean, logical. Then along comes Russell's no-class paradox, tips over your neat little filing system, and calmly walks away. The paradox, proposed by British philosopher Bertrand Russell in the early 1900s, seems harmless at first. It asks a very simple question, with a very devastating effect. Does the set of all sets that do not contain themselves contain itself? Read that again. No, it does not get less confusing. The problem is sneaky. Some sets are members of themselves. For example, the set of all sets is, well, a set. It contains itself. Other sets do not contain themselves. The set of all cats does not include itself because the set of cats is not a cat. Russell asks, what about the set of all sets that do not contain themselves? If it contains itself, then it should not, because it only contains sets that do not contain themselves. But if it does not contain itself, then it should, because it fits the definition of a set that does not contain itself. You cannot win. It is a logic loop that eats itself alive. The paradox exposed a fatal flaw in the foundations of mathematics and logic. At the time, mathematicians were busy trying to build a perfect, airtight system where every object had a clear definition and every rule had no exceptions. Russell showed that their pristine house of cards had a hungry cat living in the middle of it. You have probably encountered a mild version of this paradox in everyday life. The classic example is the barber scenario. In a village, the barber shaves all men who do not shave themselves, and only those men. So who shaves the barber? If he shaves himself, he should not. If he does not shave himself, he must. Cue the headache. The core of Russell's no-class paradox is self-reference. Systems start to break down when things begin referring to themselves. It is like trying to take a selfie of your phone with the phone's own camera. You are going to end up disappointed. You see this in language too. Consider the sentence. This sentence is false. If it is true, then it must be false. If it is false, then it must be true. Congratulations, you are now stuck. Russell's paradox forced mathematicians to rethink the very foundations of set theory, which is basically the study of how to group things. Until Russell came along, everyone thought they had it figured out. Then he asked one question, and the entire system politely collapsed. Modern mathematics dodged the issue by inventing new rules. Systems like Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory carefully avoid sets that can refer to themselves. It is the logical equivalent of putting baby gates around the stairs to stop the toddlers from falling down them. Russell's no-class paradox also offers a warning to anyone who loves making lists. Lists are useful. Lists are powerful. Lists can destroy you. What happens if you try to make a list of all lists that do not list themselves? If it is on the list, it should not be. If it is not on the list, it should be. Congratulations, your list just exploded. The paradox has real-world echoes in computer science. Programmers know that recursive loops without proper exit conditions lead to crashes. The program keeps calling itself until it runs out of memory and collapses into an electronic heap of regret. Russell would have nodded approvingly. Even daily life cannot escape. You tell yourself, I will organize my life. You make a to-do list. You add organize to-do list to the list. You then realize you need a list of lists. Welcome to the No-Class Paradox Domestic Edition. Some philosophers argue that Russell's paradox shows the limits of human categorization. The world resists being neatly sorted into boxes. The boxes break, leak, or multiply unexpectedly. Nature has no obligation to cooperate with your filing system. Russell did not destroy logic. He made it stronger. His paradox forced mathematicians and philosophers to design systems with better safeguards, to respect the power and danger of self-reference, and to accept that sometimes the only way to win is to not play certain games at all. The paradox also delivers a humbling reminder about certainty. Just when you think you have the perfect system, someone will point out the exception that wrecks it. It is like proudly baking the perfect cake, only to have someone ask why you forgot to frost it. You encounter versions of Russell's paradox in conversations too. Someone asks you, "Are you the type of person who does not label people?" If you say yes, you just labeled yourself. If you say no, you are admitting you label people. Either way, you are stuck. The paradox does not have a solution. That is what makes it a paradox. It exists to remind you that some questions are better left unasked, unless you enjoy watching structures collapse in slow motion. So as you contemplate the ridiculous beauty of a system that unravels itself by its very own design, let me leave you with one final question that captures the spirit of this delightfully frustrating thought experiment. If you create a folder on your computer called folders that do not contain themselves, and then drag the folder into itself, have you not just achieved both data management and existential dread at the exact same time? The Bootstrap Paradox, when time travel eats its own tail. Time travel has always fascinated people. The idea that you could hop into a machine, zip back to the past, change something small, and return to a dramatically altered present has powered countless movies, books, and way too many late-night arguments. But then there is the Bootstrap Paradox. It sneaks into the conversation and ruins all the fun by asking a question no one wants to answer. What happens if you bring something back from the future that never had an origin in the first place? Here is how it works. You travel back in time carrying a book, a song, a blueprint, or an invention. You hand it to someone in the past, who publishes it or builds it. The object becomes famous. Years later, it inspires you in the future to go back and give it to the person in the past. Where did it originally come from? It exists, but it has no true creator. You have just invented a loop that defies logic, reason, and copyright law. The term bootstrap comes from the old saying, "Pull yourself up by your bootstraps," which was always meant to be impossible. The Bootstrap Paradox makes that impossibility seem like child's play. It is the ultimate chicken or egg problem, except the chicken, the egg, and the entire farm are stuck in an endless time loop. The paradox exposes the fragile structure of cause and effect. Normally A causes B, B causes C, and so on. The Bootstrap Paradox short-circuits this by having a cause B and B cause A with no outside starting point. It is like trying to trace the beginning of a circle. You cannot. A classic example is the story of a time traveler who goes back and gives Beethoven his own sheet music. Beethoven becomes famous for writing the music, even though he never actually composed it. The traveler only knew the music because Beethoven wrote it. So who did? Answer: no one. It just exists. That is the Bootstrap Paradox waving politely and reminding you that logic has left the building. Science fiction has milked this paradox for all it is worth. Characters give themselves blueprints, letters, or knowledge from the future, only to discover that the loop cannot be broken because there never was an original version. It is a plot device, a headache, and a source of endless online arguments all at once. You do not need a time machine to experience mild versions of this paradox. Ever forget where you first heard a phrase, adopted it, and passed it along to others, only to eventually hear it again from someone who learned it from you? It spreads without a clear starting point, leaving you to wonder if the phrase simply popped into existence like an uninvited party guest. The paradox also plays with identity. Imagine meeting your future self, learning some life-changing advice, and then growing up to become the person who delivers that advice to your younger self. At no point did the advice originate from anywhere. It just recycled itself eternally. Philosophers and physicists love to debate whether the Bootstrap Paradox makes time travel impossible or simply messier than anyone ever expected. Some argue that it violates the principle of causality. Others say causality is overrated and the universe can handle a few closed loops without collapsing in on itself. One possible explanation comes from the concept of a closed time-like curve, which sounds impressive mainly because no one is quite sure what it means in real life. It is a theoretical model where objects can loop back in time without violating the laws of physics. It also makes for excellent science fiction technobabble. Of course, there is the more practical response. Time travel does not exist, so the paradox only matters if you invent a time machine, in which case you will have bigger problems than explaining to your past self why your hair looked better 5 years ago. The Bootstrap Paradox touches on something deeper, the human obsession with origins. You like knowing where things come from. You label, trace, document, and archive. The paradox laughs at your filing system and refuses to provide an entry for point of origin. The closest real-world parallel might be in language. Words evolve, migrate, change meanings, and sometimes appear in multiple places with no clear origin. The phrase "okay," for example, has so many theories about where it came from that it might as well be a linguistic time traveler. You also see shades of the paradox in culture. Who invented rock and roll? Who first wore jeans as fashion? Who decided that pineapple on pizza was acceptable? You can debate, trace influences, and argue passionately, but often the answer is a blurry loop of inspiration feeding back on itself. The Bootstrap Paradox shows you that some mysteries remain unsolvable by design. The loop cannot be broken because it never had a start to begin with. It exists purely to frustrate people who demand neat answers. In the end, the paradox reminds you that not everything needs to be traced back to an origin. Sometimes things just are, and no amount of questioning will change that. This is oddly comforting and completely infuriating at the same time. So as you ponder the twisted logic of objects, ideas, or knowledge appearing out of nowhere, and existing purely within their own feedback loop, let me leave you with one final, completely reasonable question. If you travel back in time to remind yourself to buy milk, and your past self forgets anyway, have you not just invented the most expensive, least effective grocery list in history? The paradox of the court. When winning means you lose. Picture ancient Greece, where philosophers debated everything, including the meaning of winning an argument about not paying your teacher. Welcome to the paradox of the court, also known as the case of Protagoras and Euathlus. It is the perfect example of how a clever loophole can turn a simple agreement into an endless legal tug-of-war that would make even the most patient judge slam their gavel and walk out. The story goes like this. Protagoras, a well-known teacher of law, agrees to train a student named Euathlus. They strike a deal. Euathlus will pay Protagoras only after he wins his first court case. On paper, this looks fair. It also looks like neither of them had ever heard of a worst-case scenario. Euathlus finishes his training and decides not to practice law. No cases, no courtroom victories, no payment. Protagoras, understandably irritated that his business model just imploded, sues Euathlus for the money. That is when things get beautifully messy. Protagoras argues, if I win this lawsuit, the court will force Euathlus to pay me. If I lose, then Euathlus will have won his first court case, and by the terms of our agreement, he must still pay me. Heads, I win, tails, you lose. Protagoras probably thought he had just invented the world's first perfect contract. Euathlus counters with logic so devious, it deserves its own award. If I win, the court has declared I do not owe anything. If I lose, then I have still not won my first case, so I still do not owe anything. Heads, I win, tails, you lose. This is the paradox of the court, a legal agreement designed to work within a clear system, only to collapse into absurdity when both sides apply logic at the same time. The result? An unsolvable loop where any outcome can be interpreted as a victory by either side. Philosophers and legal scholars have debated this scenario for centuries, partly because it illustrates the fragile relationship between law and logic, and partly because it is just fun to watch someone else be stuck in a problem with no way out. At the heart of the paradox lies the dangerous assumption that logic and fairness always work together. They do not. The contract Protagoras and Euathlus agreed on relied on a condition that seemed simple: pay after a victory. It did not account for what happens if the student chooses to avoid court altogether, or worse, faces the teacher in a courtroom before ever representing anyone else. The paradox teaches a brutal lesson for anyone who writes contracts, policies, or agreements. Humans are far more creative in finding loopholes than you will ever be in closing them. You see watered-down versions of the paradox of the court everywhere. A company offers a rebate after you submit a receipt, then rejects your claim because you used the wrong shade of blue ink. A loyalty program promises a free coffee after 10 purchases, then changes the terms right when you get to 9. An extended warranty says it covers everything except the one part that broke. The paradox is also alive and well in customer service. A customer tries to cancel a subscription. The company says, "You cannot cancel because you have an active account." The customer replies, "I know. That is why I am canceling." Round and round it goes. The paradox of the court shows how legal systems can become paralyzed by self-referential conditions. The rules refer back to themselves, creating a logic loop that no ruling can definitively resolve. Courts hate this. Judges hate this. Everyone hates this, except philosophers, who gleefully take notes for their next lecture. Some have suggested the paradox only works because of poor contract wording. If Protagoras had added a simple line like, "or after 2 years, whichever comes first," none of this would have happened. True, but then we would not have this delightfully ridiculous thought experiment. The paradox also offers a warning about relying too heavily on conditional promises. Anytime you tie a future action to an uncertain event, you run the risk of that event never occurring, or worse, occurring under the exact circumstances that make the contract meaningless. It highlights the difference between legality and practicality. Something can be legally airtight and completely impractical. Protagoras had every legal right to expect payment. Euathlus had every legal right to interpret the contract literally. Neither of them had the foresight to imagine the scenario they found themselves in. You can even see the paradox pop up in personal relationships. Someone says, "I will only apologize after you admit you were wrong." The other person responds, "I will only admit I was wrong after you apologize." Congratulations, you are now living in the paradox of the court, domestic edition. The paradox reminds you that no system is safe from loopholes. People will always find ways to stretch, bend, twist, and contort agreements to suit their needs. It is part of what makes humans so frustrating and yet so fascinating. There is no satisfying resolution to the paradox of the court. The historical record does not tell us how the real case, if it ever happened, ended. Scholars have proposed various ways a judge might have ruled, but none are fully convincing. The paradox was never meant to be solved. It was meant to show how even the simplest contracts can unravel when clever people weaponize logic. So as you contemplate the dangerous beauty of agreements that defeat themselves the moment they are tested, let me leave you with one final question that captures the ridiculous spirit of this ancient legal nightmare. If you tell your roommate you will only take out the trash after they vacuum, and they say they will only vacuum after you take out the trash, have you not both just invented the perfect way to live in squalor forever? The Epimenides Paradox. When telling the truth makes you a liar, there is something undeniably satisfying about catching someone in a lie. It gives you a brief, smug sense of moral superiority. Now imagine a statement so perfect, so impossible, that it traps itself in an endless loop of lying about lying. Welcome to the Epimenides Paradox, the ancient and wonderfully annoying puzzle that shows how quickly even a simple sentence can unravel reality. The paradox comes from a Cretan philosopher named Epimenides, who casually declared, "All Cretans are liars." Seems harmless enough, right? except Epimenides was himself a Cretan. So was he lying? If he was telling the truth, then he was a liar, which makes the statement false. If he was lying, then not all Cretans are liars, which means the statement is somehow true. Congratulations, you have now entered the linguistic quicksand of the Epimenides Paradox. On the surface, it feels like a cute word game, the sort of thing you might say just to mess with people at dinner parties. The problem is, it gets worse the more you think about it. The paradox plays with self-reference, where something refers to itself in a way that breaks the very logic it depends on. This sentence is false, is the modern, brutally efficient version. If it is true, then it must be false. If it is false, then it must be true. It is an infinite loop with no exit sign. Epimenides probably had no idea his statement would torment philosophers, logicians, linguists, and anyone stuck grading essays for the next 2,000 years. He was simply making a point about the questionable honesty of his fellow islanders. Instead, he became the accidental founder of what would later be known as the liar paradox. The Epimenides Paradox exposes the fragile relationship between language and truth. You expect words to mean what they say. The paradox politely laughs and says, "Good luck with that." You encounter milder versions of this paradox all the time without realizing it. Someone says, "I am always lying." If they are telling the truth, then they are lying, which means they are not telling the truth, which means they are lying, which means, well, you get it. You are trapped. The paradox also thrives in comedy. Think of the classic, "Everything I say is a lie" routine. It gets a laugh because it forces you to accept two contradictory ideas at once. Your brain hates that. It desperately tries to resolve it. It cannot. That is the punchline. In law, the paradox has uncomfortable implications. Can a witness be considered credible if they declare themselves unreliable? Would you believe someone who testifies, under oath, that they should not be believed? The legal system wisely pretends questions like that do not exist. The paradox even shows up in technology. In computer programming, self-referential loops without an exit condition cause infinite loops that crash systems. You write code that checks itself, and it keeps checking forever. Eventually, your computer stops working, your project dies, and your co-workers glare at you with the cold fury of people who know exactly whose fault this is. Epimenides' puzzle also has deep philosophical consequences. It forces you to think about what it means for something to be true. If truth depends on consistency, then any statement that creates contradiction destabilizes the very foundation of knowledge. Some philosophers argue that the problem lies not with truth, but with language itself. Words are imprecise. Grammar bends, context shifts. Meaning leaks out of sentences like water from a cracked vase. The paradox exists because we foolishly expect language to behave with the discipline of mathematics. Others suggest the paradox can be resolved by creating levels of language. Statements about lying belong to a different category than statements about facts. This is called the theory of types. It works, sort of. Mostly it just moves the headache up one level, so that more advanced philosophers can argue about it instead. You can spot Epimenides-style thinking in your everyday life. Ever dealt with an overly dramatic friend who says, "I am never dramatic"? Or a coworker who insists, "I never exaggerate," while wildly exaggerating? You stare at them, caught between correcting them and silently respecting the sheer audacity of the contradiction. The paradox also hides in customer service. "Our system never has outages," says the automated message you get while the system is down. You stare at your phone, wondering if you have stumbled into a modern version of ancient Cretan logic. Politicians have been known to weaponize the spirit of the paradox. They boldly claim, "You cannot trust anything the media says." The statement is delivered via the media. The paradox quietly applauds from backstage. The Epimenides paradox even touches on personal identity. When someone says, "I never change," you know full well that the only constant in life is change itself. You cannot help but marvel at the unintentional philosophical depth packed into such a casual lie. The paradox also teaches a valuable lesson. Context matters. Epimenides probably did not intend to break logic. He was making a sweeping generalization, not launching a linguistic time bomb. His critics turned it into something far more entertaining and annoying. There is no satisfying solution. That is why the paradox has lasted so long. It exists to show you the boundaries of language, the limits of reason, and the dangerous fun of playing with contradictions. You can try to avoid it. You can define terms, clarify meanings, create rules about what counts as a statement. Someone will always find a loophole. The paradox thrives because humans love creating neat boxes and then immediately trying to think outside them. The Epimenides Paradox also highlights something uncomfortable about truth. Sometimes things can be logically impossible, yet linguistically unavoidable. You cannot stop people from saying, "This sentence is false." You also cannot make the statement behave properly within a system that demands consistency. It sits there like a smug cat knocking objects off your perfectly organized shelf. In the end, the paradox serves as a playful reminder that certainty is often an illusion. You want things to be either true or false. The paradox says, "Why not both?" and walks off whistling. So, as you reflect on the ridiculous brilliance of a sentence that defeats itself simply by existing, let me leave you with one final question that feels entirely fitting for this maddening puzzle. If you declare, "I have absolutely nothing to declare," as you stand in the customs line holding a suitcase full of souvenirs, have you not just become the most honest liar in the history of travel? The Nihilist's paradox, when nothing really matters, except that it does. There are few statements in philosophy as boldly dramatic and quietly exhausting as "nothing matters." It sounds profound. It feels rebellious. It is also the central headache of the Nihilist's paradox, where declaring that nothing has meaning instantly creates the contradiction of that very claim having meaning. The paradox starts simple. Nihilism, in its most distilled form, says life has no objective value, purpose, or meaning. Everything is empty, pointless, and temporary. The sun will explode, the stars will fade, and every human achievement will vanish into the cosmic void. So why bother? The problem is that even this grim, cosmic declaration depends on meaning. Saying nothing matters to the person saying it. It invites others to consider it, debate it, or roll their eyes and change the subject. If the statement itself holds value or significance, even if only as an idea, then the claim that nothing matters instantly collapses. Congratulations, you have just walked directly into the wall that is the Nihilist's paradox. The paradox exposes the self-defeating nature of extreme philosophical positions. You cannot logically argue that nothing matters without using words, ideas, and concepts that require meaning to exist. It is like throwing a brick at a glass house while standing comfortably inside. Some philosophers, of course, have tried to finesse their way out of this. They claim that nothing matters objectively, only subjectively. Translation: the universe does not care if you feel sad, but your local pizza place still expects you to pay. The subjective escape route works to a degree. It allows you to admit that meaning is created by humans and is not inherent in the universe itself. The problem? Even declaring something as subjective attaches a classification that requires you to care about categories. You are back at square one. The paradox also thrives on human nature. People love declaring that nothing matters, especially after bad days, bad dates, bad coffee, or bad Wi-Fi. Yet they still get up the next morning, brush their teeth, go to work, and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. If nothing truly mattered, you would not even bother arguing. You see mild forms of the paradox in everyday cynicism. Someone shrugs and says, "None of this matters." An hour later, they are furiously typing a customer service complaint because their package arrived with the wrong brand of batteries. The contradiction is breathtaking. The paradox also reveals the limits of intellectual detachment. Philosophers love to toy with ideas as if they exist in an isolated vacuum. They do not. Every idea, no matter how cold or abstract, eventually crashes into the messy business of everyday life. Even the most hardcore nihilist cannot escape small personal preferences. They might claim that love, beauty, and friendship are meaningless illusions. but ask them whether they prefer air conditioning on a hot day, and you will get a very meaningful response. The Nihilist's paradox plays out constantly in art, literature, and pop culture. Characters declare that nothing matters only to immediately engage in dramatic, life-altering decisions. They claim the universe is indifferent, and then spend entire story arcs trying to prove themselves to the universe. It is the ultimate narrative contradiction. You see it in politics and activism too. Someone insists, nothing will ever change, nothing matters. 2 days later, they are passionately canvassing for votes or arguing on social media at 2 in the morning. Nihilism always seems to last until someone hits a nerve. The paradox teaches you a valuable lesson about consistency, or more accurately, the lack of it. People are very good at compartmentalizing. They believe nothing matters on Monday morning, but still get excited about dinner plans by Friday. Some philosophers argue that the paradox is actually a mirror. It reflects back your impossible desire to be purely rational in a world where emotion and meaning sneak into every corner. You cannot live without meaning. Even your decision to reject meaning becomes a kind of meaning. Others suggest that the paradox shows the artificial nature of human thought experiments. They claim it is cute to play with extremes like nothing matters, but the real world stubbornly refuses to accommodate such clean absolutes. Life is not an all-or-nothing equation. It is a chaotic, frustrating, delightful mess of contradictions. You experience the paradox every time you doom-scroll news headlines, shake your head at the state of the world, then proceed to spend 20 minutes agonizing over which shade of throw pillow best complements your couch. Even nature laughs at nihilism. A tree does not wonder if it matters. It grows. A dog does not ponder whether fetching a stick holds deep cosmic meaning. It fetches. Only humans stand around trying to intellectualize themselves out of participating. The paradox also highlights the power of defiance. It is almost heroic, in a strange way, to stare into the void and declare, "None of this matters. But I am going to care anyway." It is the ultimate act of rebellion against indifference. In the end, the nihilist's paradox serves as both a warning and a comfort. It shows you that it is impossible to detach completely. It also quietly reassures you that this is perfectly fine. Your brain is designed to seek purpose, whether or not it technically exists. Some philosophers call this the human condition. You know everything ends. You know your tiny individual efforts are unlikely to reshape the cosmos. Yet you still try. You plant flowers that will bloom for a few weeks. You learn hobbies no one asked you to master. You fall in love knowing full well it comes with an expiration date. That is meaning in spite of meaninglessness. The paradox remains unsolved because solving it would mean finally removing the last contradiction from life, which life simply refuses to do. Instead, it invites you to embrace the tension, smile at the irony, keep going anyway. So as you reflect on the hilarious frustration of declaring that nothing matters while knowing you care deeply about everything, let me leave you with one final question that perfectly captures the absurd beauty of this paradox. If you loudly tell everyone you have stopped caring about what anyone thinks and then check your phone every 5 minutes to see if they responded, have you not just earned your PhD in the fine art of meaningful nihilism? The paradox of the unexpected gift. When expecting the unexpected destroys the surprise. There are few moments more universally delightful than receiving an unexpected gift. Your birthday. You know something is coming. The holidays. Same thing. But an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when someone hands you a beautifully wrapped box for no reason, that hits differently. The paradox of the unexpected gift, however, swoops in to remind you that nothing, not even generosity, escapes the twisted grasp of logic. The paradox goes like this. If you are told in advance that you will receive an unexpected gift sometime soon, you will never actually be surprised. Your brain immediately begins the mental gymnastics routine. You tell yourself, if I know it will happen, then it cannot be unexpected. But if I do not know when, then it will be unexpected. Unless I guess correctly, which would ruin it. Unless I am wrong, which would restore the surprise. Unless I guess wrong on purpose, which makes me correct again. And so on. The result is an infinite loop of second guessing that makes even the gift itself start to feel irrelevant. The paradox lives at the crossroads of knowledge and uncertainty. It asks the deceptively cruel question, can you genuinely be surprised if you know you're going to be surprised? It turns the wholesome joy of an unexpected gift into a weird psychological trap. The roots of this paradox are a close cousin of what philosophers call the unexpected hanging paradox. A judge tells a prisoner he will be hanged unexpectedly next week, and the prisoner thinks himself into believing it cannot happen. Same mental circus, different occasion. Back to your gift problem. Someone tells you, I have a surprise for you this week. Your brain immediately spirals into analysis mode. Is it coming today? Tomorrow? Was it a trick? Will they forget? Should you pretend to be surprised anyway? You become so focused on anticipating the surprise that the surprise itself has already failed. Here is the paradox in full, exhausting motion. If you expect to be surprised, the gift cannot be unexpected. But if you do not expect it, the gift remains unexpected. The act of knowing destroys the surprise you were meant to experience. The paradox of the unexpected gift exposes the fragile link between information and experience. Humans love knowing things ahead of time. You check weather apps, track packages, peek at spoilers, and glance at the dessert menu before finishing your entree. Surprise is fun only when it happens under your control. You see this paradox play out all the time with surprise parties. Someone lets it slip. You spend the entire day pretending you do not know, mentally preparing your shocked face. The moment arrives, everyone yells, "Surprise!" You respond with your best fake gasp. You have succeeded. You have also failed. Even casual gift-giving becomes complicated under the weight of this paradox. Someone hands you a mysterious envelope and says, "Do not open it until later." You nod politely, but your mind goes into overdrive. What is it? Why wait? Is it a prank? Did they forget your birthday and panic? The gift no longer matters. You have become the detective in your own psychological thriller. The paradox also touches on human behavior in the age of tracking and notifications. A package marked "Surprise Delivery" instantly leads you to check the app every 10 minutes. By the time it arrives, you know the courier's name, the weight of the box, and the exact minute it left the warehouse. You open it with no surprise at all, only the dull satisfaction of closure.
The paradox of the unexpected gift is not just about presence, it is about expectation itself. Modern life thrives on controlling uncertainty. You do not like waiting. You do not like not knowing. You want arrival times, countdowns, estimated delivery windows. The paradox laughs at all that and reminds you, the moment you know something is coming, the mystery is gone.
This contradiction pops up in entertainment too. A teaser trailer promises an unpredictable twist. Congratulations. You now expect the unexpected twist. It no longer counts as unpredictable. When the twist arrives, you nod and say, "I saw that coming." Technically, you did not. Psychologically, you absolutely did. The paradox is even worse in relationships. Someone tells you, "I have a surprise planned for us this weekend." Instantly, you build mental spreadsheets of possibilities. Is it dinner? A trip? An elaborate prank? You prepare for all options. When it finally happens, you act surprised, but the surprise has long since been drained dry by the emotional anticipation marathon. Some philosophers suggest that the paradox only works because humans are terrible at predicting randomness. You think you are good at guessing when something will happen. You are not. The surprise survives, not because of the gift giver, but because of your inability to ever be fully certain. Others argue that the paradox proves surprise is more about intention than outcome. If the giver wanted to surprise you, then mission accomplished. Your mental gymnastics were part of the experience, like an uninvited appetizer before the main course. The paradox does not care about your feelings. It points out, coldly and logically, that any attempt to predict or prepare for a surprise guarantees its failure. And yet, like all good paradoxes, it stubbornly refuses to ruin the fun completely. Humans continue to love surprises. The delight of the unexpected birthday card, the random free coffee, the friend who shows up unannounced with your favorite snack. These things still work, despite your best efforts to predict them. You cannot fully eliminate surprise because life, thankfully, is unpredictable at its core. A surprise still works best when you stop trying to control it. The paradox of the unexpected gift ultimately becomes a reminder of the futility of overthinking. Sometimes you just have to accept the experience, open the mysterious box, and let go of your internal running commentary for once. So as you reflect on the exhausting, endlessly entertaining mental loop of knowing about a surprise that you cannot know about, let me leave you with one final question that feels perfectly suited to this dilemma. If someone hands you a wrapped box and says, "You will never guess what is inside," and you immediately guess, "A box," have you not just won and lost the game in the same breath? Moore's Paradox. When you know something, you do not believe. There are plenty of things people say that instantly raise eyebrows. I am not mad, I am just disappointed. We should totally hang out sometime. I read the terms and conditions. But nothing quite captures the mental whiplash of Moore's Paradox, a strange little linguistic puzzle that proves your brain can simultaneously believe and not believe something at the same time. The paradox was introduced by philosopher G.E. Moore in the 1940s. It goes like this. Someone says, "It is raining outside, but I do not believe it is raining." On paper, both halves of the sentence make perfect grammatical sense. As a statement, it is ridiculous. Your brain immediately flashes a big red warning. Wait, what? The paradox lives in that awkward space between knowledge and belief. You can know something is true and still not believe it. How does that work? Spoiler, it does not. That is the point. Moore's paradox exposes the difference between what you can say and what you can meaningfully assert. It is possible to form the sentence. It is impossible to genuinely say it without sounding like you have just lost an argument with yourself. Philosophers describe this as a paradox of assertion. If you state something, you are implying that you believe it. Saying, "It is raining, but I do not believe it is raining," turns the basic rules of communication into a car crash. The beauty of Moore's paradox is how easy it is to trigger in everyday situations. Think of someone insisting, "I know I left my keys on the table, but I do not believe they are there." You stare at them. They stare at you. Somewhere, G.E. Moore smiles. The paradox works because belief and knowledge are normally supposed to be friends. Knowledge is justified true belief, after all, or so philosophy textbooks claim. Moore's paradox rudely interrupts that friendship and forces you to confront the uncomfortable gap between knowing something in theory and actually believing it. You encounter this dissonance more often than you think. A person might say, "I know eating a whole pizza is a bad idea, but I do not believe it will hurt me right now." They know, they do not believe. The result? Regret, indigestion, and a life lesson they will ignore the next time. Another common variation shows up when people say, "I know I should not text them, but I do not believe it will cause problems." Famous last words. Moore's paradox does not depend on lying or being mistaken. It depends on the weird way language allows you to construct sentences that betray the basic purpose of communication, to tell someone something you actually stand behind. This paradox also explains why some statements sound wrong even when they are logically possible. You might hear someone declare, "I do not believe that the sun exists, but I know it does." Your brain tries to process it, fails, and sends the conversation to the recycling bin. Even customer service scripts accidentally stumble into Moore's territory. Ever heard, "We value your business, but we do not believe your issue exists"? That is Moore's paradox with a corporate logo slapped on it. Moore's paradox also lives in politics. A politician might say, "I know the evidence says this policy works, but I do not believe it will." The audience collectively groans and wonders if they can vote for a magic 8-ball next election instead. The paradox reveals how slippery the concept of belief can be. You can know something logically while emotionally or intuitively resisting it. It explains why someone can know flying is statistically safer than driving, yet still grip the armrest like they are riding a malfunctioning roller coaster. Some philosophers argue that Moore's paradox shows the limits of first-person authority. When you say something about yourself, people assume you are the ultimate expert on your own beliefs. The paradox flips that assumption and says, what if you are not? Others suggest that Moore's paradox proves language is more of a social tool than a perfect information delivery system. The purpose of saying something is not just to share facts, it is to manage how others perceive your beliefs. You are expected to believe what you assert, even if deep down you are still arguing with yourself. You can even spot miniature versions of Moore's paradox in your own thoughts. Ever stared at your phone and thought, I know I left it on the table, but I do not believe it is there? Then you spend 10 minutes checking everywhere else before reluctantly returning to the table, where the phone was sitting the whole time, silently mocking you. The paradox also explains why people can stubbornly deny evidence while knowing it is true. Climate change, health risks, even basic facts about daily life. People often know something intellectually but refuse to believe it emotionally because belief demands commitment, and commitment is scary. There is no solution to Moore's paradox because it is not broken. It is a glitch in the system of language and thought, a reminder that communication is messy, inconsistent, and full of moments where you accidentally tell on yourself. It also serves as a good life lesson. Just because someone says something confidently does not mean it makes sense. They may have walked straight into Moore's trap without realizing it. The paradox remains a favorite among philosophers, linguists, and anyone who enjoys watching logic quietly implode. It exists to remind you that humans are masters of contradiction, and language happily accommodates our talent for thinking two impossible things before breakfast. So as you ponder the ridiculous brilliance of a sentence that defeats itself simply by being spoken, let me leave you with one final question that captures the essence of this delightfully awkward thought experiment. If you tell your friends, I know I should not stay up late, but I do not believe I will regret it tomorrow, and then yawn your way through an 8 a.m. meeting, have you not just lived out Moore's paradox in the most relatable way possible? The quantum observer paradox, when watching changes what you see. There are plenty of good reasons to mind your own business. The quantum observer paradox provides the best one. Sometimes just looking at something changes what it is. Scientists call this quantum mechanics. The rest of us call it the reason I should have just stayed out of it. The paradox comes straight from the strange world of subatomic particles. In everyday life, observing something does not affect it. You can stare at your cat all day, and it will remain a cat, though it may start plotting your downfall. In the quantum world, however, the simple act of measuring or observing a particle changes its behavior. This deeply frustrating phenomenon was first revealed by experiments like the double-slit experiment. Here is the simplified version. Scientists fire tiny particles, like electrons, at a barrier with two slits and detect where they land on a screen behind the barrier. When no one observes which slit the particle goes through, it behaves like a wave and goes through both slits simultaneously. When someone observes the particle to see which slit it chooses, it stops acting like a wave and behaves like a normal, obedient particle that only goes through one slit. The act of watching it collapses the possibilities into a single outcome. Observation changes reality. This is the quantum observer paradox. You may be thinking, that makes no sense. That is exactly why physicists have been losing sleep over this for almost a century. The paradox messes with your deeply held belief that reality exists independently of you. You like to imagine the universe carries on, indifferent to your presence. Quantum physics calmly says, not quite. The quantum observer paradox has baffled even the best scientific minds. Albert Einstein hated it. He famously said, I like to think the moon is there, even if I am not looking at it. Einstein's irritation did not stop the experiments from continuing to suggest that, on a very small scale, the moon might well wait until someone checks. At the heart of the paradox is the concept of superposition. In the quantum world, particles exist in multiple possible states at once until measured. They are not this or that, they are both neither, and everything in between. Observation forces them to choose a state. This is not just a cute science trick. It is real, repeatable, and completely incompatible with how your common sense expects the world to work. You can experience a watered-down version of this paradox in daily life. Ever walk into a room and forget why you went in? Your brain was in a superposition of reasons until you tried to observe it. Suddenly nothing makes sense. Or consider the dreaded observer effect at work. You are working hard, minding your own business. Your boss walks by. You immediately sit up straighter, click frantically, and open spreadsheets. The act of being observed changed your behavior. You even see hints of the paradox at social events. Someone says, "Act natural." The moment you try to act natural, you instantly forget how to stand, where to put your hands, or what to do with your face. Congratulations, you have entered the human-scale version of the quantum observer paradox. The paradox is not just weird, it has practical implications. It underpins the design of quantum computers, which use superposition and entanglement to process information in ways classical computers cannot. We are still figuring out exactly how to make these machines work, mostly because the act of measuring their state tends to ruin the whole process. The quantum observer paradox also raises deeply unsettling philosophical questions. What counts as observation? Is it just a camera, a scientist, a cat? Does the particle know when it is being watched? Scientists hate this question. Philosophers love it. There are many interpretations of what is really going on. The Copenhagen interpretation, one of the most popular, basically says, "Do not worry about it. Shut up and calculate." Helpful, comforting, completely unsatisfying. The many worlds interpretation offers another option. It suggests that when a particle chooses a state, every possible outcome actually happens, but in separate, branching universes. So if you thought regular life was chaotic, imagine millions of versions of you, some who picked the left door, some the right, and one who still cannot decide. No matter the explanation, the quantum observer paradox stands as a reminder that the universe does not care about your need for tidy answers. You can spot echoes of this paradox in modern culture. Reality TV thrives on it. The moment the cameras roll, people stop behaving naturally. The real in reality TV becomes a scripted performance, simply because it is being observed. The paradox also explains the behavior of pets. Your dog knows exactly when you are watching and will perform accordingly. Your cat, of course, always knows you're watching and just chooses to ignore you harder. The quantum observer paradox teaches you that perception shapes reality more than you like to admit. The way you think about people, situations, and even yourself changes, depending on whether you think someone is paying attention. There is no solution. Scientists continue to test, poke, and model the problem, hoping for clarity. So far, the only consistent answer has been, reality at the quantum level refuses to behave when you look at it too closely. In the end, the quantum observer paradox reminds you that certainty is overrated. It invites you to accept that sometimes just showing up changes the outcome, even if you never meant to interfere. So as you reflect on the strange, infuriating beauty of a universe that acts differently the moment you check on it, let me leave you with one final question that sums up the spirit of this reality-defying dilemma. If you walk into the kitchen to see if there is any cake left, and the moment you open the fridge you realize someone already ate it, have you not just experienced the domestic version of the quantum observer paradox in the most tragic way possible? The identity paradox. When you are not sure if you are still you. You wake up, stretch, and head for your first cup of coffee. Same house, same routine, same you. Or is it? The identity paradox politely taps you on the shoulder and asks a question you really did not need before caffeine. Are you still the same person you were yesterday, last year, or 5 minutes ago? You think the answer is obvious. The paradox exists to make sure it is not. The identity paradox explores what it means for something, or someone, to remain the same over time despite constant change. You assume your identity is fixed. Your name stays the same. You remember your life. You keep buying the same brand of cereal. That must mean you are the same person. Philosophy laughs softly and says, "Not so fast." At the heart of the paradox is the messy relationship between change and continuity. Everything about you changes over time, physically, mentally, emotionally. Your cells regenerate, your opinions evolve, your hairstyle choices fluctuate wildly, and your taste in music hopefully improves. Yet you still claim to be you. The classic thought experiment illustrating the paradox is the ship of Theseus. You have a ship. Over time, you replace every single board, every nail, every sail. Eventually, no original piece remains. Is it still the same ship? If not, at what point did it stop being the ship of Theseus and start being something else? Apply that same thinking to yourself. Every 7 to 10 years, your body has replaced most of its cells. You are a walking, talking version 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and counting. Are you still the original? You can make it even weirder. Suppose you built an exact copy of your ship, or yourself, with all the discarded parts. Which is the real one? You are the version of you that existed 3 birthdays ago with slightly fewer gray hairs and much more questionable fashion choices. The identity paradox hits hardest when you try to define what same actually means. Is identity tied to your body, your memories, your personality, your social role, or some mysterious inner essence? Philosophers cannot agree. Psychologists cannot agree. You cannot even agree with yourself after 2 cups of coffee. You see this paradox play out in daily life without realizing it. You find an old photo of yourself and think, that is me, but it does not feel like me. Same face, different person. Welcome to the paradox. Or consider how people change in relationships. You say, you are not the person I married. Technically, they are. Realistically, they are not. They evolved. So did you. The paradox strikes again. The paradox also explains why reunions feel so strange. You meet people from your past. They remember a version of you that no longer exists. You remember a version of them that also does not exist. The conversation turns into a bizarre exchange between ghosts of past identities. Even language cannot help. The word I stays constant, but what it refers to keeps shifting over time. When you say, I loved that song in high school, you are talking about a person who technically no longer exists. The current you would never admit to liking that song. The paradox shows up in legal systems too. The law treats people as continuous entities. You can be held responsible today for something you did years ago, even though you may have changed completely. The legal system does not care. It assumes you are the same person for accountability's sake. Technology adds an extra twist. Your digital self lives on in social media, emails, and embarrassing old blog posts long after you have moved on as a person. Is the you online the real you? Was it ever? The identity paradox leans back and smiles. You even experience this paradox internally. You look back at old decisions and ask, what was I thinking? The truth? You were a different version of you. That person made choices based on knowledge, feelings, and circumstances you no longer have. Yet somehow you still have to deal with their consequences. Some philosophers suggest that identity is not about static properties but continuity of experience. You are you because there is an unbroken chain of memories and experiences linking past you to present you. Others argue that memory is unreliable and constantly reconstructed, making the whole theory about as stable as a chair made of marshmallows. The identity paradox offers no satisfying solution. It exists to show you that the question, who am I, is more complicated than you want it to be. You want a tidy answer. The paradox refuses to give you one. It does, however, provide some comfort. You are not alone in your confusion. Everyone is constantly shifting, evolving, and negotiating who they are. Identity is not a finished product. It is a never-ending work in progress. The paradox also serves as a reminder that change is not your enemy. It is proof you are alive. The day you stop changing is the day you stop existing. Growth, mistakes, and reinvention are built into the very structure of being human. You can even argue that the paradox makes life interesting. Imagine if you never changed. You would be stuck with the same haircut, the same opinions, the same terrible playlists, and the same bad decisions forever. Suddenly, the messiness of identity feels like a blessing. So as you sit there, half wondering whether you are still the same person who started reading this chapter, let me leave you with one final question that captures the delightful frustration of the identity paradox. If you finally clean out your closet, donate half your clothes, and buy an entirely new wardrobe, yet still call it your style, have you not just become living proof that identity is the most stylish paradox of all? The paradox of tolerance. When tolerating everything destroys tolerance itself. Tolerance is usually considered a virtue. It sounds noble. It feels civilized. It is the word people throw around when they want to signal how open-minded they are, while silently hoping you do not test that claim too hard. But then along comes the paradox of tolerance, to remind you that even the noblest ideals can eat themselves alive if you let them. The paradox was first outlined by philosopher Karl Popper in 1945. It goes like this. A society that tolerates all ideas, even intolerant ones, will eventually be destroyed by those intolerant forces. In other words, you cannot tolerate people whose entire mission is to eliminate tolerance. The very thing you are trying to protect becomes the weapon used against you. Think of it like inviting a vampire into your home because you do not want to seem judgmental. The vampire thanks you, drinks your blood, and then sues you for discrimination if you try to close the window. At the surface, the paradox feels like an intellectual trap. Tolerance says everyone should be allowed to express their ideas. But what happens when someone expresses the idea that certain groups should not exist, have no rights, or must be silenced? If you allow that under the banner of free speech and open dialogue, you just handed the keys of the kingdom to the very people who want to burn it down. This is the paradox of tolerance. The uncomfortable, messy reality that absolute tolerance leads to its own destruction. The paradox lives at the intersection of free expression and survival. You want a society where people can argue, disagree, and hold wildly different opinions. What you do not want is a society where someone uses that freedom to end the conversation permanently. You see this in everyday life. A group holds a community meeting to discuss differing views. Someone shows up and starts shouting racial slurs, issuing threats, and demanding that certain people be removed. If the group tolerates this under the principle of everyone gets a voice, they have just undermined the very purpose of the meeting. Popper's solution was blunt. He argued that tolerance must come with limits. You tolerate ideas, not actions aimed at destroying the system of tolerance. You do not owe courtesy to people who openly advocate for oppression, violence, or the end of open debate. This does not mean silencing disagreement or banning people who simply have unpopular opinions. It means drawing a line at those who reject the basic idea that everyone should have equal rights and dignity in the first place. The paradox of tolerance pops up in politics constantly. Democracies wrestle with how much freedom to give groups whose stated goal is to abolish democracy. Do you ban hate groups? Do you allow extremists to run for office? Do you tolerate intolerance until it is too late? There are no easy answers, which is what makes this a paradox instead of a helpful guidebook. The paradox also thrives online. Social media platforms brag about being open forums for free speech. Then they discover certain users are using that openness to spread hatred, misinformation, and organize violent movements. The platforms get accused of censorship when they crack down. They get accused of negligence when they do not. The paradox of tolerance sits back and nods knowingly. You even experience a watered-down version of it in personal relationships. Imagine you host a game night. Everyone is welcome. One guest spends the evening flipping the board, insulting the players, and calling everyone stupid. Do you let them keep coming back in the name of tolerance? If you do, you will not have any friends left by the third game night. The paradox teaches an uncomfortable truth. Freedom and responsibility are forever linked. You cannot have a free society without also maintaining rules that protect the framework of that freedom. Some argue that the paradox is misunderstood. They claim that true tolerance means never resorting to force or exclusion, no matter how toxic the ideas may be. Others argue that this is fantasy-level thinking, the intellectual equivalent of bringing a butter knife to a sword fight. The paradox of tolerance does not offer clean solutions. It demands that you balance competing values. You must decide when tolerance becomes weakness, and when intolerance must be rejected to preserve the greater good. This creates the perfect storm for endless arguments. Philosophers love it. Politicians exploit it. Regular people just want someone to give them a simple rule that works. Bad news. No such rule exists. What the paradox does offer is clarity about the stakes. It reminds you that tolerance is not just passive acceptance. It is an active defense of the conditions that allow diverse opinions to exist in the first place. You can see the challenge everywhere. Universities debate whether to allow controversial speakers. Newspapers decide whether to publish inflammatory opinions. Companies wrestle with whether to fire employees for offensive statements made outside of work. The paradox of tolerance hovers over all of it, like an unwanted guest at an awkward dinner party. In a way, the paradox mirrors the human tendency to push every principle to its breaking point. You value honesty until someone uses honesty to insult everyone. You value generosity until someone takes advantage of it. You value openness until someone weaponizes it against you. The paradox of tolerance tells you that limits are not betrayals of your values. They are the conditions that allow those values to survive. It is the ultimate, uncomfortable compromise. You do not have to like it. You just have to understand that every society, community, or friend group eventually faces the moment where they must decide whether to tolerate the intolerable. So as you reflect on the impossibly fine line between defending open dialogue and preventing open destruction, let me leave you with one final question that captures the exhausting reality of this paradox. If you invite everyone to a potluck dinner and one person insists on bringing nothing, eating everything, and loudly criticizing the food, have you not just discovered the most relatable, bite-sized version of the paradox of tolerance? The hole in the sock paradox, when the absence becomes the presence. You are getting dressed in a hurry. You pull on your socks, only to discover an unmistakable cold breeze on your big toe. You stare in disbelief at the hole. The sock looks complete, but it clearly is not. Welcome to the hole in the sock paradox, the rare philosophical riddle that lives in your laundry basket and ruins your morning. At first glance, the problem seems trivial. A sock with a hole is a damaged sock. You toss it and move on. But the paradox patiently stands in your doorway, arms crossed, waiting to ask the question you were trying to avoid. Is a sock with a hole still a sock? If it stops being a sock, when exactly did it cross that line? The hole in the sock paradox is a sneaky cousin of the classic problem of defining objects based on their form versus their function. Socks exist to cover your feet. A sock with a hole is still mostly covering your foot. Is that enough? When does the hole become so big that you stop calling it a sock and start calling it a leg warmer with a tragic backstory? Philosophers would label this a boundary paradox. It exposes the gray area between something and not something. You love to categorize. Sock, not sock. The paradox reminds you that the universe laughs at hard categories. Your frustration deepens when you realize the hole is both an absence and a presence. Technically, the hole is nothing. It is the space where fabric used to be. Yet you can see it, feel it, and curse it. Nothing has become something. You did not sign up for this before coffee. The paradox also highlights how human thinking struggles with gradual change. One small tear does not stop the sock from being a sock. A few extra holes? Still arguably a sock, now with character. But at some point, there are more holes than fabric. You hesitate. You hold it up to the light. You reluctantly decide it has transitioned into cloth scrap formerly known as sock. The hole in the sock paradox is not about socks. It is about the human obsession with labeling and the sheer stubbornness of reality to fit inside those labels. You encounter versions of this paradox constantly. Your favorite t-shirt fades, shrinks, develops holes. When do you stop calling it your favorite t-shirt and start calling it a rag for cleaning windows. Or consider aging cars. You proudly tell people, "My car is in great shape." Meanwhile, the bumper is zip-tied, the paint has peeled into modern art, and the muffler has long since retired. When does it stop being a great car and become a moving collection of spare parts? The paradox even shows up in relationships. You say, "We are still friends. You have not spoken in years. You barely remember their birthday." Is the friendship still there, or are you just holding on to the memory of what used to be a friendship? The hole in the sock paradox also provides an excellent example of how definitions depend on context. The same sock with a hole is trash at a formal dinner and perfectly fine for a lazy Sunday on the couch. The object has not changed. Your standards have. You see this on social media too. An app crashes once and it is glitchy. Crash twice, it is unreliable. Crash 3 times, it is deleted. Same app, same code, shifting definitions. The paradox also exposes your personal inconsistencies. You will wear a holy sock at home but act deeply offended if you accidentally expose it in public. You will swear up and down it was perfectly fine this morning, even though you knew that hole had been lurking for months. Some philosophers argue that objects do not actually have a fixed essence. Their identity is just a bundle of features you agree on. As long as the sock covers your foot, it is a sock. The moment it fails at that basic task, it ceases to be one. This definition works until you try to apply it consistently and realize every object you own could be on the verge of an identity crisis. Others claim the paradox teaches you about thresholds. Change happens gradually, but your labels flip instantly. The sock goes from fine to ruined, in the space of a single sigh and decision to finally let go. There is no solution to the hole in the sock paradox, because it reflects the deep truth that most of life exists in between. Categories are convenient. Reality is inconvenient. You even experience this paradox internally. You tell yourself, "I am still young." Then you realize you now make a weird noise when standing up. You have officially reached the philosophical hole in the sock of aging. The paradox also serves as a gentle reminder not to take labels too seriously. Objects, people, and situations constantly shift. Clinging too tightly to rigid definitions only guarantees frustration. It might also explain why you hold on to things long past their expiration date. That ancient hoodie with holes everywhere? Technically, it still fits. You know you should throw it out. You do not.
It remains in limbo between garment and artifact. The hole in the sock paradox exists to show you that almost nothing in life changes all at once. Things fade, fray, and fall apart slowly. The transition from is to is not is rarely clear, and your brain hates this. It prefers clean answers, which is why this paradox continues to bother you long after the sock has been thrown away.
So as you ponder the tragic comedy of an object that stops being useful by becoming too much of what it was never supposed to be, let me leave you with one final question that captures the spirit of this strangely philosophical household dilemma. If you find a sock with a hole so big it could double as a wristband, and you still wear it because it is my lucky pair, have you not just promoted the paradox from problem to fashion statement? The liar cycle paradox. When every truth is just another lie waiting to happen. There are many ways to make people uncomfortable. Telling them you just adopted 12 snakes is one. Telling them you never lie is another. The liar cycle paradox thrives on the second one. It lives in the space where truth and lies chase each other around in a never-ending game of intellectual tag, exhausting everyone except the paradox itself. The liar cycle. Paradox begins with an innocent-sounding statement. I am lying. Immediately, your brain freezes. If the person is lying, then they are telling the truth about lying, which means they are lying, which means they are telling the truth, which means, well, you get the picture. You have just been dragged into the liar cycle, where logic goes to die. It is not a single paradox with a neat beginning and end. It is a continuous loop that feeds on itself. Every attempt to resolve it simply resets the cycle. The more you think about it, the worse it gets. Unlike the classic liar paradox, which stays put at, "This statement is false." The liar cycle paradox escalates things by turning every denial and confirmation into fuel for the loop. It is the conversational equivalent of trying to plug a leaking boat with a sponge. You hear versions of this paradox all the time. A person says, "I am telling the truth, but do not believe anything I say." What are you supposed to do with that? Nod? Run? Call for backup? The paradox plays with the fragile contract between speaker and listener. Communication is supposed to be based on mutual trust. You assume that when someone says something, they believe it. The liar cycle paradox rips that assumption to shreds and waves the pieces around for fun. You encounter the spirit of this paradox in everyday life. A friend claims, "I never lie." You immediately know this is a lie, but you cannot prove it, so you spend the rest of the conversation mentally replaying every interaction you have ever had with them. Politicians live in the liar cycle full time. They deny something, then deny denying it, then claim they never said it in the first place. The paradox watches happily from the sidelines. The liar cycle paradox also thrives in customer service. A representative tells you, "I assure you our system is accurate, but there may be errors." It is a sentence designed specifically to make you question both your sanity and your phone bill. Even technology is not safe. Automated systems sometimes spit out errors like, "An unknown error has occurred." There are no errors. You stare at the screen and realize you have been dragged into the digital version of the liar cycle. The beauty and the frustration of this paradox is that it exposes the gap between words and meaning. Language pretends to be clear. The liar cycle paradox smirks and proves it is anything but. Some philosophers argue that the cycle exists because language allows self-reference. You can talk about your own truthfulness in ways that create impossible loops. It is like a snake eating its tail, then complaining about how bad it tastes. Others believe the paradox teaches a valuable lesson. Beware of absolute claims. Anyone who declares they never lie is either lying, delusional, or about to prove themselves wrong very soon. You see it in relationships. Someone says, "I promise I will never let you down." The statement immediately guarantees the cycle will begin the moment they are 5 minutes late to dinner. The paradox even touches on personal identity. You might say, "I am an honest person." Then you find yourself telling a small white lie to avoid hurting someone's feelings. Are you honest? Dishonest? Both? Neither. The liar cycle just spun again. There is no solution to the liar cycle paradox. You cannot fix it, silence it, or outthink it. You can only accept that it exists to remind you how easily your confidence in certainty can be destroyed by a single cleverly worded sentence. You can try to avoid it. You can be vague, non-committal, evasive. Maybe. I'm not sure. It depends. But that only works until someone calls you out, and the cycle starts over. The liar cycle paradox also serves as a mirror for how people behave when caught in contradictions. They deflect, rephrase, backpedal, or double down. The paradox does not care which option they choose. Every response feeds the cycle. Even humor falls victim. Someone jokes, "I always lie." You laugh. Then you stop and wonder, wait, are they joking or are they lying about lying? The paradox wins again. The liar cycle paradox does not want you to resolve it. It wants you to acknowledge the absurdity of trying to pin down something as slippery as truth. It is the perfect example of how language can be both your greatest tool and your worst enemy. So as you reflect on the mental carnival ride that starts with one sentence and ends with your brain quietly shutting down for maintenance, let me leave you with one final question that captures the spirit of this relentless philosophical trap. If you proudly say, "I never repeat myself," and then immediately say, "I never repeat myself," have you not just become the most efficient contributor to the liar cycle paradox? The paradox of inquiry, when you cannot learn what you do not know how to ask. Every great discovery starts with a question, but what if you do not know what to ask? That is the paradox of inquiry. It is the intellectual equivalent of looking for your lost keys without knowing what keys look like, where you last saw them, or even if you ever had keys to begin with. This ancient philosophical brain twister comes from Plato's dialogue Meno. The student Meno asks Socrates, "How can you search for knowledge when you do not know what you are looking for? If you know it, there is no need to search. If you do not know it, how will you recognize it when you find it?" Socrates, being Socrates, responded in the only way he knew how, by asking more questions. The paradox of inquiry cuts right through your comfort zone. You think you know how learning works. You ask, you explore, you discover. Easy. The paradox calmly ruins that by pointing out the flaw. You cannot inquire into something if you have no idea it exists. You encounter this every time you try to fix something you barely understand. Your car makes a strange noise. You type into a search engine. Car noise. Congratulations! You have reached the first stage of the paradox of inquiry. You cannot name the part. You cannot describe the sound. You cannot even explain what is wrong. You want answers, but you lack the words to get them. Or take cooking. You know the dish tastes bad, but you have no idea which ingredient caused the disaster. Was it the expired spice? The mystery herb you grabbed in a moment of wild optimism? Or the fact that your oven's temperature dial is more suggestion than fact? You cannot improve the recipe if you do not know what went wrong in the first place. The paradox thrives on your human need for certainty. You want to believe that every problem comes with a neat checklist. Know what you are looking for, ask the right question, get the answer, move on. The paradox of inquiry exists to remind you that reality does not play along. It also explains why beginners often feel paralyzed. You sign up for a class. The teacher asks, "Any questions?" You sit silently, because you do not even know what you do not know. Your mind spins. Should I ask something? Is this a dumb question? What am I supposed to be confused about? The paradox of inquiry forces you to confront the terrifying blankness of ignorance. Learning does not start with knowing something. It starts with realizing that you do not know and having no clue where to begin. Some philosophers have tried to wiggle out of the paradox by suggesting that all inquiry starts with some prior knowledge. Even if you cannot fully define your question, you have at least an intuition that something is missing. That works fine in theory. In practice, it is the equivalent of wandering through a hardware store hoping the thing you need will magically jump off the shelf and say, "Hi, I am the part you could not describe." Others propose that inquiry is not linear. You do not need to know the exact end goal. You start with vague questions, refine them as you go, and let the process itself guide you toward clarity. Think of it like trying to assemble IKEA furniture without reading the instructions. You start confidently, mess it up, backtrack, and eventually end up with something that resembles a chair. The paradox of inquiry pops up in relationships too. Someone says, "We need to talk." You nod solemnly, then immediately panic. About what? Did I forget something? Is this about the dishes, the anniversary, or the time I said I liked that movie they hated? You do not know what you do not know, and the guessing game begins. The paradox even shows up in medical visits. You feel off. You tell the doctor, "I do not feel right." They ask, "Where does it hurt?" You reply, "I do not know. Somewhere." Now both of you are trapped in the paradox of inquiry, staring at test results like modern oracles trying to interpret cryptic signs. You also experience this paradox in personal growth. You know you want to be better or find your purpose. But what does that even mean? Better at what? Purpose, according to whom? You realize you have enrolled yourself in the world's longest and vaguest self-improvement course with no syllabus. The paradox exposes a simple truth. Inquiry requires both humility and persistence. You must be willing to wander in the dark for a while, asking clumsy, awkward questions that may or may not lead anywhere useful. The good news? That is how most learning happens. Few discoveries come from someone knowing exactly what they are looking for. Most breakthroughs happen when someone asks a completely unexpected question in the middle of searching for something else. Penicillin was discovered by accident. Microwave ovens came from a melted candy bar. The paradox of inquiry may frustrate you, but it also guarantees that surprises remain possible. In modern life, you experience the paradox whenever you Google symptoms. You type in something like, mild pain, weird spot leg, probably nothing serious, urgent, and hope the internet will reward your vague inquiry with a clear answer. Instead, you get, could be harmless or fatal, see a doctor. Helpful. Even artificial intelligence struggles with this paradox. A computer cannot answer a question you do not know how to phrase. It needs parameters, it needs context. So do you. There is no true resolution to the paradox of inquiry. It remains an elegant mess. It reminds you that curiosity is as much about not knowing as it is about finding out. The journey itself shapes the question and the answer. The paradox also teaches patience. It is perfectly normal not to know what to ask. Every expert you admire started where you are, confused, unsure, and asking bad questions that eventually led to better ones. So as you reflect on the sheer chaos of trying to figure out something when you cannot even describe the problem, let me leave you with one final question that captures the spirit of this beautifully frustrating dilemma. If you stand in front of your closet, stare at a full rack of clothes, and think, I have nothing to wear, have you not just experienced the most relatable, fashion-forward version of the paradox of inquiry?